Committee, 28th October 2016. Could you remind everyone to make sure that either mobile phones are switched off or on silent, and note that this meeting may be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. Thank you. Could you confirm the Sederunt, please?
Good morning. We have 12 members present, and I have apologies from Councillor Ogilvie, Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Diggle.
Councillor Hislop as well.
Confirm that's 13 members present. I've had apologies from Councillor Ogilvie and Councillor Diggle, Councillor Ian Crothers, Councillor Geddes, Councillor Groom, Councillor Hislop and Councillor Witts are not present but may be along later.
Maybe or so. Have we got any declarations of interest? No. No declarations of interest. Could I just say at the end of this meeting there'll be an exempt item coming forward, just to let everyone know. After the end of the meeting, there'll be an exempt item. Right, thanks. Could we confirm the minute of the previous meeting, please? Agreed. And could you outline the procedures to be followed?
The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation, applicants or their agents. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order, and a copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session, and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application, or, where appropriate, agree a recommendation to be made to full council who will determine the application.
Thank you, Lucy. Aye. Okay, we'll go to item 4 on the agenda. It's Lochfield Road, Dumfries, plan number 15/P/3/0220. And we've got Andrew Robinson speaking on this one.
Excuse
Andrew?
me, point of order, Chair. Item 3, the minutes.
I've done the minutes.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
I've done the
Sorry.
minutes. I don't know whether you're late. Andrew?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the application is for a residential development comprising 4 houses and 12 flats in the Lochfield Road area of Dumfries. And this is the site here. It's situated on the eastern side of Lochfield Road, to the north of what is now the Queen of the South indoor football arena. And to the northeast of the site are residential properties on Ashfield Drive. The proposed development is proposed to be laid out like shown on the slide. So it would comprise 5 blocks of semi-detached properties, 2 of which are to front Lochfield Road. The other 3 are proposed to back onto the access road serving the football arena. There's also proposed to be an area of amenity, open space amenity area in the corner, and by the car parking area, an area of hard standing which is supposed to be also a shared area between cars and residents as well. This is another site plan that's been submitted, but this shows the areas of hard standing in a bit more detail and the proposed finishes of them. So it shows the proposed access into the site, footpaths, and the hard standing area in the middle is supposed to be a blocked paving. This slide actually shows a close-up of the arrangement of the boundary with numbers 37 and 39. The reason this has been shown is there was previous applications for this development which had a very problematic arrangement with these properties by virtue of density and impact on their amenity. And this close-up is to show that amended arrangement in more detail, the boundary of the properties just along there. And the proposed houses are to be 2-storey semi-detached dwellings. For the flats, each block would contain 4 flats. The materials are proposed to be facing brick and feature panels to the wall and concrete roof tiles. And in terms of the house type, this is a 2-bedroom, 4-person house type. This is a 3-bedroom, 5-person house type where there's going to be 2 of each of those. And for the cottage flats, which don't include feature panels to the walls, there would be 4 flats in each block. And there's an alternative type, but that's really only for the internal arrangement rather than any difference in the external appearance. In terms of street elevations, the top, there's 3 sections here. So the top one is actually taken from the football arena. So highlighted in black are the proposed dwellings. The lighter dwellings are actually those existing on Ashfield Drive. So that's the top one is the view from the football arena. The middle one is from the parking area, so effectively looking to the south. And the bottom is the view from Lochfield Road, where the proposed access into the site would be between the 2 houses just shown there. Okay, the remaining slides are photographs of the site to show the appearance of it and its surroundings. So this is looking west across the site from the position where some of the flats would be. This is looking back where the area of open space is, so you can see the houses on Ashfield Drive in the background. This is the area where the proposed amenity space would be situated in the corner of the site. So this is taken actually from the access road into the football arena. This is looking back towards the dwellings on Lochfield Road. And these are the dwellings on Lochfield Road, which would be opposite the site. And in terms of the proposed access arrangements, there's an existing access to the site, which is to be utilised and upgraded. And in terms of visibility, this is actually taken from 2.4 metres back from the road, which is where visibility is measured from. So this is looking to the north, and this is looking to the south, where there's a little mini roundabout which serves the football arena. Okay, this is along the northeastern boundary of the site on the right-hand side there. And this is looking towards number 39 Ashfield Drive. So this is the roughly where the view of the flats would be in the proximity to the properties. And this is to number 37 Ashfield Drive. I've included an earlier photograph where there's less overgrowth, and it actually shows and a bit clearer that the levels on the site are actually higher than the adjoining properties. They're around about a metre or so. They vary between from up to 1.5 metres at the maximum. This is the land to the rear of 37 Ashfield Drive, so you can see the boundary treatment is currently in a fence to that property. And this is the garden area of number 39, so it's fairly open. This is taken out with the site. This is actually taken, there's a shared area at the back of Ashfield Drive, which is where this is taken from. But this is looking for number 39 towards the site, so the flats would be just beyond the boundary there, at the closest point about 4 metres off that boundary. And this is from number 37, so looking just beyond where the telegraph pole is where the corner of the flats would be. So in conclusion, development is considered to comply with the relevant policy, the local development plan, and previous issues relating to the density of the development and impact on adjoining residential amenity has considered to have been addressed in this application, and it's therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions stated in the report.
Thank you, Andrew. Members, points of clarification? None? Right, thank you. Could we have John Gardner, please, the objector? And John, you've got 3 minutes. Oh, get your slides first, Andrew. John, you've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
John, I wonder if you can speak closer to the mic so we can hear you a bit better.
Sorry. No. Sorry. No, I need it to work, so I'm using it. Sorry.
Aye.
No problem.
Right. Work it for here. Just tell them in advance, and I'll advance the slides from there.
Can we go into number 5 first, please? Keep going. Again. Right, that's fine. This, in the newspapers, was reported as an existing access point. This access point has not been used for 40, 50 years. The roundabout and access to Palmerston Park was done a good few years ago, but to say that as an access point is very misleading, I would say. Next one, please. That is taken from where the drive will be for the semi-detached houses. We have measured it at 32 metres, and at 30 miles an hour, it will take 3 seconds at maximum for a car to encroach on that driveway. Nowhere else in Lochfield Road do we have driveways opposite each other. They're all offset. Next one, please. As I say, from the corner to it's 30 metres. Right, at the moment, we have calculated that 3,000 cars or vehicles a day use this road, which is absolutely, we've been told it's a quiet road. This is not a quiet road. The new hospital's been built. It's been used as a rat run at the moment for people taking shortcuts to Lochside, and they won't use Terreggle Street because of speed bumps. Emergency services use this vehicle, and no later than Monday, and if we could move it on, please. No later than Monday, we had an accident in this road. The doctor's surgery, as I say, has been open in the last couple of years, last year anyway, 10,000 patients. There's now traffic going into the Palmerston Arena, which is now used as a swimming pool overflow car park, and as I say, the new hospital opening 2017 will be the quickest way for people coming from Castle Douglas, etc., and the hospital, avoiding the Glasgow Street A75.
30 seconds to go, John.
Next one, please. Next one. This was Monday at 2 o'clock at the exact spot. The ambulance is parked 20 metres away from where your drive is going to be. This was a local resident, one of the main objectors who was supposed to be here with me today, was turning in, was hit from the rear by a taxi. This shows the corner, how blind a corner it is as well, and how dangerous the area is. We just feel that the traffic being used in this road
That's
is...
your 3 minutes, John.
Okay.
Members, you got any questions for Mr. Garner? Patsy?
So, Mr. Gardner, so your main concerns about this development is the road safety
Yes.
impact. And I noticed something on one of your slides that a survey was meant to be carried out. I don't see it in these papers. Do you know if that survey was carried out?
It was never carried out. It was 2 of the objectors went representing all the objectors to a councillor's surgery, where he assured them that a survey would be taken out, ticket would be done so that they could do a risk assessment. But because there was only one set of equipment available, it wasn't available at the time, and it's never been done.
Just on a follow-up to that, so how have you come to the figure of 3,000 cars per day? How have you worked
By
that out?
physically sitting, counting. That's how sad it is. And that is enough. That's a minimum. Okay?
Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Mr. Gardner, on the first slide there was something about a filling station. I've only been in the Dumfries area 40 years, but I can't remember a filling station being there. Could
The
you
Secretary of
explain that
State
to
for
me?
Scotland turned an application down for a filling station there. When Tesco's owned the building, they applied for a filling station to be built on this site, and the Secretary of State for Scotland turned it down on appeal.
Alistair, you want back in?
What was the reason for that?
Objections, we objected to it. To be honest, I don't recollect exactly what the objections, or the reason was.
Fine. David?
Aye, thanks, Chair. Mr. Gardner mentioned a surgery where I was asked about the traffic count. And as he quite rightly said, unfortunately the equipment wasn't available for doing an electronic traffic count, and it was done manually. And it, I'd like to, obviously, when we go into session, I'll address the issues again, but we're not happy with the manual traffic count that was done, and we're of the view that a proper electronic count for 24 hours.
Can you explain who the we is, David?
Sorry?
Can you explain who the we is?
Myself talking to roads people. Sorry about that, Chair.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. I assume, Mr Gardner, the traffic survey was done on a weekday. Is that correct?
No, we've done it on various occasions. You can forget about a Saturday when the football's on, because there's no way we can get out of our houses to go anywhere. I took some photographs of the traffic then. Terreggle Street's closed off, so we can't go that way. So all the traffic has to come down past our houses on match days. But you can take it a Sunday. We did, the one in particular that we did was a Sunday. And we got 3,000 cars on a Sunday.
Thank you.
Any other members? Stephen?
Thank you. You mentioned there in your presentation about the driveways being on one side of the road and sort of being staggered effectively. I know you're a bit bothered just with the presentation there, but would it be possible to, is it okay to maybe see that, or could you explain that in a wee bit more detail, how that would be?
The whole length of Lochfield Road, there are no drives on either side of the road. They're either on one side or the other. So from the south, from the roundabout south, they're on the, looking that way, they're on the right-hand side, and looking down, they're all on the left-hand side, which is on the same side of the road. There's nothing to the side where the proposed development is going to be. Now all of a sudden we're going to have vehicles coming out opposite each other with a flow of traffic. It's a fatality waiting to happen.
Yeah, you mentioned new hospital there. What impact will the new hospital have? It's 2 or 3 miles away. It's not even on the route.
It's on the outskirts of Dumfries to the, well, I call it the west. And if you come up Maxwell Station Road, at the moment it's used as a rat run from up Lochfield Road along Terreggle Street down Maxwell Station Road to avoid the bottleneck, which is the A75 roundabout in the Cuckoo Bridge. And you can only see that getting worse because people will not queue at the major roundabout on Glasgow Road. So this is the easiest access. They won't go down to Terreggle Street because of the speed bumps. And if you check with the emergency vehicles, they use Lochfield Road as well. Terreggle Street's a no-no.
Yeah, with all due respect, I don't see that myself, quite frankly. Anyone's going to use the bypass to get to the new hospital because it sits right on the bypass.
Just got one to ask.
I'll wait and see.
You said about Terreggle Street being closed off on match days. Is that it's not happened 2 or 3 times a season when it's the major teams? It'll not happen every Saturday when there's a home game.
Well, it seems to have been since the swimming pool started to use the Palmerston Arena for car parking. They used to use this field, as it was, for overflow parking for the football. But because it's unsuitable, because of what they've dumped in it, they can't use it.
But is that not only, as it say, just near enough at the end of the matches when they bring the buses back into the town for the...
No, it's for 2 or 3 hours. And
any other members? No? Right, thank you very much, John.
Okay.
Could I have Norman Young from DGHP, who is the applicant, please? Thank you, Norman. You've got 3 minutes as well, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go to wind up.
Thank you. I'd just like to say to the committee today that DGHP have constructed a total of something like 600 new homes across Dumfries and Galloway as part of our mixed tenure regeneration and development programme. All the designs that we produce are bespoke for each site to enhance the local environment, which we're trying to do on this site in Lochfield Road. We feel that the development of this site is the kind of completion of the original houses that were built in the 1940s, I guess, the Ashfield Road development was built. And this pocket of land, for some reason, has never been built on. But we think that we will complete the streetscape of Lochfield Road, and we will also close off the back gardens of the houses that you saw in the slides from Andrew, and it will complement the local landscape and streetscape. Initially, DGHP had different ideas for the site, and we were looking at putting some secure accommodation in there, or some supported accommodation in there in 3-storey flats, which were not very popular. But following a series of meetings with the planning officers and an open day that we held at the Palmerston Arena for the local residents, we've subsequently refined our scheme to the scheme that you now see today, and we've lost quite a few units through the discussions over a period of time, but DGHP are quite happy to proceed with this development in a reduced state. And that's the scheme that we're bringing to you today. The kind of orientation and design of the houses, they ensure that all the principal rooms are south-facing, and the houses have been designed in such a way that they all maximise the solar gain, and it also creates interest for the occupants that are in them. The site, as Andrew had alluded to, is kind of pedestrian-friendly. We've talked about parking spaces, but the Scottish Government have asked that parking spaces and cars don't overwhelm developments, that developments are for people, for children, for integrating with each other, not for the sole purpose of cars taking over the environment. And this is what we're trying to achieve in this development, albeit it's a small step. There's 16 units here.
You've got 30 seconds to go, Norman.
Sorry. That's what we're trying to achieve here. And 2 of the houses, maybe that we're proposing here, may be the first to reach gold standard in Scotland. These standards are way above the current building regulations. They've got lower CO2 emissions. 50% of the hot water requirements are met by renewable energy. We've got 2 silver standard houses, which again is above the normal standards, and the rest are
3 minutes.
bronze standard. Sorry. And the other thing that I would like to add is
3 minutes. 3 minutes is up.
There is a big demand for houses in this area, as you can appreciate.
Right, thank you. Members, David.
Thanks, Chair. Mr Young, could you just clarify exactly what the finish is? Is the finish the same as the houses that will be surrounding it on Lochfield Road and on Ashfield Drive? A similar finish?
We are proposing to finish the houses in facing brick, similar to the houses that we built in Central Lochside, the former Swinton Road area. So they will be finished in a facing brick material, facing bricks.
And I remember, Gail?
Just very briefly, you made reference to some Scottish Government legislation or whatever in relation to traffic versus pedestrians. I didn't really understand that, but can you just elaborate slightly?
It's planning guidelines built into designing streets and designing environments for new housing. The whole design ethic is towards designing spaces as opposed to designing to suit cars, refuse vehicles, and traffic. To make the environment a better place for people to enjoy and live in.
Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. Could we possibly have the layout slide up again? I just want to look, please, Mr. Young, about the actual space you're giving. I mean, looking at all that planting, is that actually really realistic? It's designed to make it look most attractive, and I understand that it does, but do you actually have the space to put that level of planting in? I'm thinking if you're saying that these houses are south-facing and they're going to benefit, and the principal rooms face south, they're going to be quite overshadowed by that amount of planting there.
That's existing planting at the bottom of that screen, which we're going to have to take a view on site as to how many we can actually retain. But the intention would be to retain as much as we possibly can as far as planting is concerned. And we would reinforce it down in the right-hand corner where we are bounding on to number 35 and 33 Ashfield Road, or 35 and 37, sorry. The landscaping at the corner where the roundabout is on the left-hand side at the bottom is new landscaping to enhance that location.
I'm back in, Jane.
And you say specifically that these designs are bespoke to enhance the local environment. I wonder if you could just explain to us how this particular design is, as you say, enhances the local environment and complements the designs of the 1940s roundabout.
There is a, maybe if you went back to the previous slide, Andrew, you know the location plan? You can see the pink section there, which is, it looks like a natural part of all the houses to the right-hand side, which is Ashfield Drive, and that corner seems to have been left over for some specific reason. And the houses on Lochfield Road, which are just opposite that arrow, don't have houses on the other side of the street, which is what a normal street is like. A streetscape has normally houses both sides of the street. So what I'm saying is our houses would complement the streetscape of Lochfield Road in that respect. And the houses which would be in the bottom boundary would close off the backscape area of the gardens in Ashfield Drive, thereby enhancing the built environment in that area.
Thank you. I understand then, Mr. Young, that what you're suggesting is that putting houses there actually completes the building lines, is what you're suggesting, as opposed to the actual designs of what they look like.
The designs of the houses are fairly contemporary, with we're maximising daylighting in the rooms, and we're keeping materials fairly simple.
Stephen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a quick question about you talked about designing so that cars weren't overwhelming the environment. And I was just wondering, what provision is there in the design that we've got there in terms of linking up with existing walkways and cycle paths, for example? I mean, where's the nearest? How does it link up from the actual development site?
I think if Andrew can, in Lochfield, maybe that previous one, that's fine, yeah. The pink area on the left-hand side is the vehicular access that John spoke about. I mean, there is an existing footpath, pedestrian footpath coming along Lochfield Road, which you can access the site from this point. We've also opened up the site further down in the bottom left-hand corner by way of this kind of enhanced open public space. And we've also taken the footpath down the bottom of the development to come along the front of the houses, which is basically near the Palmerston Arena. So there's not just one way in and out for pedestrians. It's a permeable system of walkways within the development, which again the Scottish Government are kind of advising designers to follow.
Patsy?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Could we move forward to the actual design of the houses, do you think? Okay. Now, those look suspiciously like the ones that we have in Kirkcudbright at the creamery site. Are they?
These are of a similar size. Yes, that's a two-bedroom house. Yeah.
Yeah, and design.
Sorry.
And design.
Finish
and design. Yeah.
I mean, the ones at Kirkcudbright are vertical cladding.
The finish.
No, not completely different. No, the ones in Kirkcudbright are zinc clad and render. These are facing brick finish.
Right, it's not very obvious from the picture. Because my concern is that I absolutely commend you for making them very energy efficient, and I know the people living in the ones in Kirkcudbright are very happy with the fuel bills and all the rest of it because they've been highly efficient. But we have had a huge number of disgruntled people living in and around Kirkcudbright with the actual design of the houses that you're putting up at the moment. I don't know who your architects are, but there seem to be, I absolutely understand contemporary and can't all live in with buildings that are designed on things that were put up 40, 50, 60 years ago. But I am quite concerned that they are not actually going to fit in with the environment round about it. The other thing is, how many flatted properties are there in that area?
Could I just go back to the design of the two-bedroomed house? I mean, when you look at the plan on the left-hand side, I mean, again, these houses are designed for full lifetime living. I mean, on the ground floor at the back, there is a downstairs bathroom in this house to allow elderly people or wheelchair people to be able to exist on the ground floor. Kitchens.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not disputing the design of the inside of the houses. I mean, I think that's fine. I think it's the aesthetics, it's the design from the outside that I am concerned about with these ones.
Norman, are they brick or are they wood cladding? I take it they're brick.
These are
a basic brick facing
these are
brick.
brick-faced house similar to many other houses in and around Dumfries. They are all over the place. Storey developments, Marchfield developments.
But they said that the officer said
Swinton
there were.
Road.
Sorry,
The chair, Patsy.
Sorry, Chair. Through you, but the officer said that they were cladded. Looking at that looks like it's got cladding on it. It doesn't look like brick.
No.
What colour is the brick?
Well, we have to discuss with the planning officer. We have to bring forward samples of brick for approval.
Well, I think that's part of our job in this committee to make sure that we get the proper design and use of the thing. So I think we need to.
These are just a points of clarity for Norman at the moment.
Yeah, well, that
And
was.
we've got, I know, but you can get the design when we go into session.
Well, my other question was, how many other flatted buildings are there in this vicinity?
There are 4 semi-detached houses, 2 of which are 3-bed, 2 are 2-bed, and we have 3 blocks of what we call cottage flats, which are 1-bedroom properties.
Is that what your proposal is?
Through the chair, Patsy.
Yeah.
Sorry, is that the proposal, or is that other ones in the vicinity?
No, that's the proposal. The
So what-
proposal
no,
is 16 units, 4 of which are semi-detached, 12 of which are 1-bedroom flats, which we have a great demand for these. Now. And six of the ground floor flats, which are 1-bedroom, will be completely wheelchair compliant.
What I asked was how many flatted properties were there in the vicinity?
How many flatted properties are there in the vicinity in that area, Norman?
We have quite a few flatted properties in that vicinity in Armour Drive. We have three figures of flats down there.
That's not vicinity. That's not. It's all houses around here, isn't it? Not flats.
No,
I wouldn't, or not.
Well, these are cottage flats. They all have their own front door entry. They are not. There are no communal stairwells as such there.
Andy.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm coming back to the traffic issue, and can you put me up, Andy? Can you put me up the slides with the 2 separate things? Because my reading at page 1.4 in your report here is that there's actually 2 separate traffic routes onto the main road down to Lochfield Road there, not just the one. Because my reading of this is that the house which is at the top end of your proposed access road has actually also got access onto
Lochfield Road.
Lochfield Road.
Yeah.
And then just for clarification, down at the bottom left-hand corner of the site, that appears to be a footway with trees and that out onto the roundabout. So can I ask you then, when you had the public meeting, which I commend you for, right? Did you consider at that stage putting the access for all the houses out to the roundabout where that footway is just now?
Well, again, we had consultations with the council officials vis-à-vis the roads department, and this is how we arrived at our preferred vehicular access to the site.
Through you, Chair, my question was, did you take account of the public's view, i.e. the neighbours' view at that stage, not the council officers?
I don't specifically remember that. I think I remember that recommendation possibly being put forward at the open day, but we obviously had to counter that against the advice that we were getting from the professionals. We did actually get some comments from the people at the open day about the severity of the traffic, as John mentions, and there was discussions about a crossing possibly being considered nearer the health centre that's further along Lochfield Road. The health centre appeared, the supermarket appeared, and there was a worry about pedestrian crossing at that point, which would obviously help our development, because obviously our residents would want to go to the health centre, and obviously, so it's something that DGHP would possibly look at as part of our roads construction consent application.
Right, Andy, I'll let you in now, just again.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about down at the health centre and the increased traffic there with older people and people who are infirm going to the doctors. But that's a fair old queen of steps from where this development is down to there. It's a long way for young children, for example, to go down to a pedestrian crossing. So I take your point that we need to put something in place, I would suggest. I'm not trying not to stray into what would be session here, and I'll leave that just now.
Right, Andy. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Mr Young, have you considered the possibility that the amenity area in the southwest of the development may become an informal children's play area? And that is right next to the junction.
I think we'd always had concerns about a play area being out of context, i.e. being too close to a busy road, which we've already established. So we thought it would enhance the site more if it was a well-designed landscaped area.
If I can come in, Chair.
Yeah, Jim.
The point I'm making is, if you create an amenity area, there's open space for children to play. They'll chase each other around the bushes, they'll play hide and seek, etc. And that is right next to the junction.
The whole kind of ethos behind what we've tried to do is that we've tried to make a kind of home zone type area to the rear that will be a shared surface between the traffic or the cars coming in and the children that are there. And this is what the government are actually looking for developers and housing developments to provide.
Right, got no other speakers. Thank you very much, Norman. Members, we're now in. What? Ian?
Hi, thanks very much, Chairman, if you allow me. Just a quick one on the back of, apologies for lateness in the first place, but just in regards to what Councillor Ferguson brought up there, the pedestrian crossing, just so I can ask us before Norman goes away, what are you actually proposing as far as a pedestrian crossing? Is there room for, and what was your guidance in regards to that, I should say, just so I know when it goes into debate, I understand what DGHP's understanding is of that. I just want to know, pedestrian crossing I think is maybe important. If this actual development goes ahead, I think it's important to the local people that it's implemented in the right place. So how did you come to the conclusion round about the pedestrian crossing or proposed pedestrian crossing?
Well, Councillor, it was raised at our open day at the Palmerston Arena, and it was something that DGHP took on board and said that they would be quite happy to enter into discussions with whoever about providing that facility, whether it be down at the surgery end or whether it be at our sites end. We would be advised, because we're no roads engineers, so we would do that in conjunction with the council.
Okay, thanks for that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Norman. Okay. Thank you very much. Members, we're now in session. David?
Hi, thanks, Chair. I'm quite concerned actually about this, and I don't know whether we should, whether I would ask for a deferral, whether that's appropriate, or whether go against the recommendations. With regards to traffic count, it talks in here about small increases, but there's been small increases all over the place on Lochfield Road. And the last traffic count was a manual traffic count done from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And it wasn't very satisfactory. And I think before anything's agreed, a proper traffic count needs to be done. The Queen of the South Arena is very busy every night. There's upwards of 40, 50 cars there every night. The surgery is also busy, and there's a proposal at the present moment, a pedestrian crossing is laid down on the road in that area. Now, people can say it's too far away, but we've got a pedestrian crossing put in the Glasgow Road, and there's fences round about it and everything. And I've seen two youngsters the other day, knee-high to a grasshopper, running across the Glasgow Road rather than using the pedestrian crossing. So to say the siting of a pedestrian crossing is critical, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. With regards to the finish of the houses, Mr. Young said it's similar to Dulswinton Avenue. Now, if that's the case, my view is that it's totally inappropriate for in that area, in this Lochfield Road area, where we need to look at the finish of the houses that surrounding that area and have an appropriate finish and along those lines. And on that basis, as I say, at the present moment, I'll hear what other people have got to say, obviously, but I would, as I say, I'm in two minds whether we defer or whether we refuse the application, Chair. Thank you.
Ian.
Chairman, I think if we look to defer for further information, I haven't got anything against that at all. I would happily adhere to that. But if we've got to defer, I think we should have a site visit as well, if that's possible.
So that's a proposal for a site visit. Has it got a seconder?
It was as much, if I'm thinking if we do, I mean, I'll take on board what
Jock
as a local member saying. It's as much if we are going to defer for further information, I think it'd be appropriate we took on a site visit. I'm saying putting that...
Ian, I'm not being funny on it, but if it is for a site visit, we'll need to put a halt to this, like, if the members are wanting to go on a site visit.
Putting up my view at the moment, Chairman, I'm not actually making...
No, you've not asked for a site visit yet,
I haven't. I'm saying I think it'd be appropriate we did if we do defer.
That's fine. Andy?
I can't make my mind up what if he's asking for it or he's not asking for it. If he's not, and I'm not wanting to last for the back bench, I'm wanting a site visit because unless you're there, you can't see the speed, you can't see the quantities, you can't see the visibility properly of pictures. Right? We've got concerns from members of the public. I live not that far from it. I've got concerns. The other member for that ward who's here today, he's got concerns about it. I think we should have a site visit, and I'm going to move that we have a site visit.
Alistair, that's proposal.
I don't normally ask for site visits, but I've not got any clarity in my mind regarding the traffic situation, so I would like to second Councillor Ferguson for a site visit.
Jim?
I think, Chair, we need to try and understand what a site visit would achieve, and I'm kind of concerned that Dumfries members want a site visit in Dumfries. If you look at 419, it says quite clearly there's no requirement for a site visit. Traffic plans were only submitted on 100 house developments or more. What do you want to achieve with this? That's my concern, and I would suggest you have enough information before you to make this determination today.
Ian?
I'll second that.
Gail?
I was going to second that.
Right.
I think, from my perspective, we could have done with the traffic survey, or we certainly could do with the traffic survey, and I concur with Councillor McKee on that. I think there are probably big road issues in that area. I do suspect, as one of the objectors has stated, that it is used as a rat run. I have to confess, I've used it myself. When the A75 clogs up, people try to get through town, and it is one of the most used rat runs that I've seen. So I think I would agree that we make a decision today and get on with the job.
We've got a proposer and a seconder for a site visit, and a proposer and a seconder not to have a site visit. We take the vote on this.
Okay, motion proposed by Councillor Ferguson and seconded by Councillor Witts is that a site visit takes place. The amendment proposed by Councillor Dempster and seconded by Councillor Dick is to make the decision today. Councillor Martin.
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Crothers.
Motion.
Councillor Dick,
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough,
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson,
Motion.
Councillor Geddes,
Motion, please.
Councillor Gilroy, Councillor McGregor,
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland,
Amendment.
Councillor McCaughtrey,
Motion.
Councillor McComb,
Motion.
Councillor McKee,
Motion.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Stephen Thompson,
Motion.
Councillor Ted Thompson,
Amendment.
Councillor Witts,
Motion.
and I can confirm that the amendment carries by 9 votes to 8.
Right. Carry on. Members? Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair, and I'm kind of glad that we're going to make the proposal today, how we move this actually forward. Just looking at, I mean, obviously there are concerns about traffic, there's concerns about the facing on the actual application site. Having listened to the issues in great detail, I think that on this particular area where the applicant has actually moved some over the past couple of times, that we should go with the recommendation. However, part of the conditions would be that it would be a facing brick rather than cladding that was on the outside, and that facing brick would be discussed and agreed with the officer in proposal to this application.
Any other member? Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. Let me say for the record, my swithering was due to an extent to the fact that I visited this site on Monday night on my way west. I found it helpful. It would perhaps have been beneficial, but that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, we've come to the decision not to have a site visit. In my view, having considered the application, having listened to the submissions today, I would like to support Councillor Drysdale. This application should be granted, in my opinion, sir, subject to the amendment that Archie is proposing. I'll second it.
Alistair. Ian?
Just to support what Councillors Dryborough and Geddes have said, I would support the application as is, with those amendments, conditions.
Ian Crowers?
Just clarity, I thought it was explained earlier that the cladding was a facing brick already proposed. I think that was maybe the case.
Let's bring David in here.
And we did speak to, just in regards to Councillor McKee, he did mention about deferring for having a proper traffic flow generation survey done electronically, I think, through the classifiers. So I wonder if that's still on his mind or not.
David?
Thank you, Chair. If I can just clarify the issue of the materials, Andrew, if you could actually show the elevations as well. As you'll see from paragraph 1.3, and as Mr. Young has confirmed, it would be facing brick, and what the only infill panels that we're talking about there are the yellow things that you see between the windows. Now, we also want to have more detail of exactly what is proposed, and that's why condition 3 is effectively saying that, notwithstanding the detail in the approved plans, that we need extra detail of exactly what's going on. So we'd want to see samples, further drawings, all this information, just to be entirely clear what would be going in on site. So that condition is already, as Councillor Dryborough is putting forward, I think that's already covered by condition 3. It is understood it would be facing brick, and we would be looking for facing brick.
Chair, I'm happy with that explanation, but I still go with the recommendation.
David?
Thanks, Chair. And I think I'm reasonably happy with that as well, because what was indicated earlier on just wasn't fitting in with the area. But if it's a clean finish, got any typical of that area, that's fine. But could we put in a condition that a proper electronic traffic count is done in that vicinity with the traffic at the present moment? One has been done before the surgery opened, and only a manual one has been done since. We need a proper electronic count done on that road so that proper road conditions can be implemented with regards to pedestrian crossings and everything else. If that could be included in the conditions, that would be very helpful.
David?
Thank you, Chair. That couldn't really be done as part of this application unless you were specifically resolving to defer the application pending the outcome of a traffic survey. If a traffic survey is desired by the committee, then obviously this is a planning applications committee. It is something which DG First would carry out just as part of their routine. So as a committee, you could put in a request to DG First to undertake that, but it wouldn't. It's not really within the remit of this committee to insist on that. If you're looking for this particular application to have that relevant information, well, obviously it's actually been highlighted, paragraph 4.19 has explained why the normal threshold under the supplementary guidance and travel plans is that you actually need to be 100 houses or more to justify a traffic survey to be carried out. But if you're wanting a survey done, then really that's something which you could minute a request to DG First to undertake that.
David?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I keep coming back. The only snag is, what I see is it mentions small increases in here. Now, you keep getting small increases, and they all add up to a big increase. And it's when there's a small increase tip the balance, and that these sort of things should be implemented. The likes of a traffic count should be implemented. I know there's plans afoot at the present moment, and it might be worthwhile if we
David, could we stick to the plan, the application today?
Aye, okay, Chair. As it is, I'll speak to you later.
Thanks very much. I'm just get some clarity on David's advice there. Was he saying that there's a traffic census is required if it's over a certain number of houses, or is it up to, or what was that situation? Because I find it strange that we just don't have them unless there's that big amount of houses, because my idea of the traffic census was on safety grounds, irrespective of how many people would be there. And just when I'm at it, I mean, this is the second go at this development, and you know, and they've had ample time, and I actually, quite frankly, I think it's unacceptable that this council didn't have the wherewithal to actually do this, if that had been requested.
David?
Thank you, Chair. The section I was referring to is really paragraph 419. The threshold for any individual application under our supplementary guidance and travel plans to actually require a survey is where you have any proposal for a housing development of 100 units or more. So this in itself doesn't trip that threshold. As a council, the Roads Authority will intermittently undertake surveys of traffic counts to establish the sort of point that Councillor McKee was making about incremental increases over time. And certainly things like Bank End Road, I know, have been subject to numerous traffic counts over the years to actually establish how things have changed. But as far as this specific application goes, the threshold of 100 units clearly isn't triggered here to require a survey for this specific application.
Come if it's quick, Andy.
Thanks very much. I understand having a mandatory figure and number for developments to ensure that big developers actually do this and the whole thing's put in place. But surely the driver should be safety. Right? And that's the point I'm getting at here. And it only becomes mandatory if it's 100. It should be good practice, I would suggest, in the grounds of safety if there's concerns being raised by the public.
Jim?
Chair, if you look at 422, the very last section says, overall, it's considered that development would not give rise to unacceptable traffic generation on the local road network or adversely affect road safety. That's from our roads manager. That's the professional we pay to give us advice. And the only thing I'll add to that is, I don't know how often I've got to say this, if there's an issue about road safety, the roads manager should be here to assist members in the deliberation. And I don't know why once a month we can't have a roads manager here for half a day. But anyway, the professional advice is there and it's quite clear and explicit in the papers.
Gail?
Thank you, Chair. I have issues. I'm not actually very comfortable with recommending or going with the recommendations today. Certainly, if that were the case, I would have to move a refusal for this application on the grounds of road safety and obviously the siting and design not being in keeping with the local area. I don't want to have to do that today, so I would look perhaps to a deferral, but I don't see the point in doing a traffic survey after we've given an in principle approval of the application. And I'm not satisfied. The 100, the trigger of 100 is fair enough, but it's the cumulative impact of all of the things in that locality which could actually have a safety impact on the people living in this development as well. So, when you take into consideration, the ice bowl, the swimming pool, the football ground, the roundabouts, all of the things that are in that area, it's not just about doing a survey of how much more traffic will be generated by that development, it's about the whole cumulative. So I'm not comfortable to recommend approval today without that information, and actually without clearer information about the design and the finish. So I'm not minded to recommend refusal today, but I think we should defer it until we get that information, and I would move as such.
Any member can ask at any time for a traffic survey to be done. If the likes of the temporary swimming pool, the health centre, etc., if that had been concerning members at the time round about there, they could have asked for a traffic survey at any time. It doesn't just need a planning application to come forward for to get a traffic survey. How many times has members in here went and asked to get certain roads, a traffic survey done in certain roads? It's not a you, it's just in general, Gail.
With respect, I'm not a councillor for that area, and I'm having to make a very important decision on this today, and I would like that information before I make an absolute decision.
But the point I'm making, Gail, is any member can ask for a traffic survey to get done in any bit of road at any time. No. Well, the members, as I say, when these things are going forward, we're digressing for here. Ian.
Gail took the words right out of my mouth, and as far as the reason I would ask for further information is because we'll probably have comparative figures. We'll have probably surveys done in the last 5 to 10 years. If we've got a current up-to-date survey in the traffic volume, we know how much extra traffic this site will generate. We could compare. Though we've had advice, Councillor Dempster is absolutely right. It's within the report from a professionally qualified roads officer that says this is minimal impact. But in regards to being a council member, taking this is taken away from the delegation officers. We're making this decision. We're not professional roads officers or planners for that matter. It's about just gaining a little bit more information so we have a better understanding. Whether this decision is made today or made in a month's time, I don't think there's any odds. But I don't think there's any problem with asking for further information, deferring it for a month, and then coming back when you've got that information. I think it's the right thing to do, and it would certainly help us as far as if we do require a pedestrian crossing, putting it in the right location, and I'm sure we'll get advice in regards to that meanwhile. But I would agree with what Gail says. She summed it up very well. It's just about getting further information, and I think a deferral is the right way to go forward.
You seconding Gail and Ian?
I will second Gail on that. Thanks.
Tom?
Thanks, Chairman. I mean, we spent less time on applications for 70 or 80 houses. Let's get into context here. We are talking 16 houses. How much extra traffic is that going to generate in a day? Not a great deal, I would suggest. As already been said, if there are concerns there about traffic issues, that is something that can be done out with this formal planning application, where it needs to have speed bumps put on that street, where it needs to have pedestrian crossings put in the street. That's fine. That can be done at any time. And I wouldn't see that all of a sudden building 16 houses in that particular spot is going to make this some kind of really dangerous place for pedestrians. Let's get it into the context it should be taken in. I would agree, however, that we really need to take a look at the design, and what was concerning me was actual design, because we've seen before with certain DGHP developments, whether they be in Stranraer or Dumfries, they've obviously come from the Ballamore School of Architecture. I would certainly not like to see that happening with this particular development, because quite frankly I think that some of the stuff that has been thrown up in recent years is quite atrocious. So let's make sure we get the finishes for these properties correct, and they do fit in with the rest of that area.
Well, Jane and Stephen, then we'll go to the vote. Jane.
Thank you very much. Just for the record, actually, I will say I will defend the Kukubri buildings. I think they are effective. They need a bit of softening, but they're good. Members, we've had the professional roads officer suggest that there is no problem, and we've listened carefully. We've had the representative speak to us. We've heard from him that he's counted 3,000 cars. I will point out that over a 12-hour period is 4 or 5 cars a minute. I mean, it's hardly excessive. My view is that we heard yesterday how very much these sorts of accommodation is required. I don't think that on balance that there is a particular problem with this. It's not overdeveloping the area. We've been through that before and come back with another proposal. So I will be quite happy to deal with this today and to support Councillor Dryborough's motion, I believe it is.
Okay, no, it's been fine. Stephen? So, right, Andy, I'll let you in one last time. I'll go to the vote if you're quick.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm actually referring back to when Jim spoke there, and Jim was absolutely right in what he said, but and absolutely no aspersion on the officer's integrity, but how does he work out it's safe without having done a census? That's my point. Yeah. And you've got people who live there who are saying it's a rat race. You've got ward councillors who are saying it's a rat race. Everyone says that that road is really busy, and to be fair, they did do a hand count, which is not accurate as such, and I'm actually prepared to, I think it was Gail, was it, that actually moved to defer until we get that survey done.
Been Ian seconded it, Gail. Go to the vote.
Point of order in regards to procedure. I think Archie's moving to approve this, and I think it's been seconded. I think this is more of a procedural motion when it comes to deferring, was what Gail's put forward. Do you get clarity on that? I thought they were two different things, really. They're at odds with each other.
Thanks very much, Chair. Obviously, we've had a vote already on a deferral for a site visit. There's now been a motion for a deferral for more information to come to the paperwork that's actually in front of us, the report that's actually in front of us. It is a process issue rather than a conclusive issue. We either need to defer this or we need to come to a conclusion, a recommendation today. My proposal was to go with the recommendation within the report, and that would conclude the application. There is a motion, I would suggest, that a deferral for more information is going to come back. I would put an amendment in to say that we actually do the conclusion today.
Alistair?
And I would second that, sir. We'll get that out of the way, and then we'll determine the application.
We'll have a vote whether the vote to defer it or carry on. That's a vote to defer it. It's a separate one.
Okay, I have a motion proposed by Councillor McGregor and seconded by Councillor Ian Crothers to defer the matter for further information. And I have an amendment proposed by Councillor Dryborough and seconded by Councillor Geddes that the matter should be carried on and determined today. Councillor Martin.
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Crothers.
Motion.
Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough.
Amendment.
Councillor Geddes.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor McGregor.
Motion.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor McCoftry.
Amendment.
Councillor McComb.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee.
Motion.
Councillor Thompson. Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Ted Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Witts.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
And I can confirm that the amendment carries from 10 votes to 7.
Right, Archie.
I'll go with my original recommendation, Chair, that we go with the recommendations within the application itself and approve it.
Alistair.
Second that, sir.
I would move that we refuse the application as it sits on the following grounds: its visual impact, siting scale, density and design, impact on road safety and access routes, traffic generation, impact on road safety, and I have to say that I think that for the officer to put in that it's that the proposal is considered acceptable is simply not good enough. We actually need designs that are more than just acceptable. So I would propose we refuse it on those grounds.
Patsy. Right, go to the vote.
The motion put forward by Councillor Drybra and seconded by Councillor Geddes is to follow the officer's recommendation and approve subject to the successful completion of Section 75 planning obligation within 6 months of the date of the decision or such other reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer and conditions. And the amendment proposed by Councillor McGregor and seconded by Councillor Gilroy is to refuse the application.
David.
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear, refuse on the grounds I've got noted here is on in terms of the design, the density, and the road safety concerns. Is that correct?
The amendment proposed by Councillor McGregor, seconded by Councillor Gilroy, is to refuse the application on the grounds of design, road safety, density and visual impact. Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Blake.
Motion.
Councillor Ian Crothers.
Motion.
Councillor Dick.
Motion.
Councillor Drybra.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Geddes.
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor McGregor. Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor McCoughtry.
Motion.
Councillor McComb.
Motion.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Ted Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Witts.
Amendment.
Councillor McKee, can you just confirm?
Amendment.
And I can confirm that the motion carries with 11 votes to 6.
We got item 5 on the...
And I can confirm that this decision is to follow the officer's recommendation and approve, subject to the successful completion of Section 75 planning obligation within 6 months of the date of the decision, or such other reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer and conditions.
Thank you, Lucy. We're on to item 5 on the agenda, the land north of Old Graitney Road, Gretna, plan number 14/B/4/0502. We've got Mary Duff speaking on this one. Whenever you're ready, Mary.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. The application site in this case is to the southwest of Gretna. It's a 2.5 hectare site which has a frontage to Old Graitney Road. You can see from the location plan here that it is on the edge of the settlement. It's bounded to the southwest by a field ditch which runs onwards down to the Solway. Surrounded mainly by sort of fairly low density detached single storey dwelling houses. Moving on to the next slide, this shows the LDP allocations. The site is a sort of a purple one there. It is allocated for residential development with an indicated figure of 45 dwellings. The other sites that are shaded is one to the south, which is also an allocated site in the LDP, and also the former golf course, which is red, which is a mixed-use allocation to the north. And the green areas show where there are areas of open space, including one which is in fairly close proximity to the site. It's sort of in the middle of housing between Dominion Road and Empire Way. This shows the Old Graitney Road, which is the only road which has access to the site. It is narrow at the moment. As you can see, there are some passing places, but generally it's not possible to get 2 cars past. There are also no footways on it at present. The proposal is that this would be widened to 5.5 metres wide, and also to form a footway to the northern side of it, on the right-hand side of the photo, which is the road verge. This is just looking back. The 30-mile-an-hour limit signs there would also be moved to include the site access. So that would also become the 30-mile-an-hour area. And then looking into the site from the frontage area, you can see the backs of the houses along Grayton Howe and Old Graitney Road as well. And you can see that they are mainly single-storey bungalows. This is just moving further west along Old Graitney Road, looking into the site and showing the water course, the ditch that runs along the southwest boundary, and again showing the houses backing onto the site, and again showing the ditch. A flood risk assessment has been carried out on this and is showing the areas where are susceptible to flooding. Again, this is within the site, showing the houses to Grayton Howe. And looking back towards Old Graitney Road, where the access would be. Just a few images just to show some of the context of the site. This is Dominion Road. Again, the typical housing of the fairly modern, low-density housing. And Loanmouth Road as well. This was the indicative layout which was provided with the application. It isn't set in stone, it is purely indicative, but it does show where the flood risk areas are associated with the ditch, and proposals for an amenity area which would be within vicinity of the ditch and possibly also enhance this area with as a sort of semi-natural space. There are also proposals for some play facilities as well. It isn't, we would, as part of the, one of the conditions requires a development brief to be submitted as part of any approval of matters specified in conditions. and we would want to see some further thought put into the housing layout, and particularly with regard to designing streets. The application is recommended for approval subject to Section 75 agreement in respect of contributions towards water infrastructure, also education and provision of affordable housing within the site. And as I previously said, there is also a condition which requires a development brief to be submitted with an application for approval of matters specified in conditions. And this should take account of the site context, including the adjacent allocated site, and how the development would address designing streets and other related guidance, and also identify and positively address the opportunities and constraints of the site, as well as providing a parking strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Members, Gail?
Yeah, it was just, I think I picked it up just to clarify, the local development plan, that particular zoned area for this application, is it 45, did you say, that is the proposed amount of houses on that site?
45 is the number that is indicated in the LDP allocation, yes.
Thank you. Ian Krause?
Thanks, Chairman. If we go back to the proposed layout, I know it's only indicative, the indicative proposed layout. I just wonder in regards to that, I mean, it doesn't look as if it complies with designing streets at all, so maybe it is, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you'll be able to give me your own professional advice in regards to that, Barry. And the size and scale when it comes to the ridge height, we wouldn't see it if it was to be passed today, we wouldn't actually see it as a committee. What would your view be in regards to the height? Because I think the local area to that is story and a half maximum within the local vicinity. Would we have the similar view to that, or would, because if there's potential of two stories or even larger, I don't know what your view is in regards to that, but I would like to hear it.
We wouldn't say that this really does accord with designing streets. There's no indication within the application that there'd been much regard to designing streets. It is a fairly standard road layout. And the house design itself, I think that they did indicate a sort of two-storey detached, semi-detached design, which, yeah, I mean, the predominant layout and design in the area is single-storey, certainly in the immediate vicinity. What we would like is for more regard to be given to the context of the site within the approval of matters specified in conditions, which is why we've asked for this design brief to be carried out, and for more consideration of this to be given. So, yeah, I mean, single story might be the best thing, but equally a variation design might also be equally acceptable and provide a bigger range of housing in that area.
Thanks for that, Chairman.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Vary, I know this is an indicative layout, but did you say the proposed play area is in proximity to the ditch?
Well, they have shown, they've shown like an indicative play area within, it would be within the flood risk area. That might possibly wouldn't be acceptable, but we wouldn't expect the ditch to also flood every day either. But yeah, I mean, that's up for negotiation as well, obviously as part of an application for approval of matter specifying conditions. But what they are proposing is this amenity area around where the ditch may flood. They've left this area free of development, and they're also proposing enhancements to the ecology of this area. So it seems natural that there is some kind of semi-natural green space that's made out of this area and could be possibly used by residents for whatever purpose.
Thank you. Any other members? No, that's fine. Could we have Andrew Clark, an objector, reading a prepared statement on behalf of Mr. Norman? And you've got 5 minutes, Andrew, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Clark of Robert Potter and Partners, on behalf of Mr Trevor Norman. My client firstly wishes to emphasise that they are entirely in favour of the development and indeed wish to see the site developed. There are, however, aspects associated with the application which we feel should be raised. The recommendations of SEPA in relation to road levels and avoiding any land raising conflicts with the Council flood risk management recommendations. A solution to this could only truly be another or additional and more permeable and well-connected access point. There is also a matter of consistency. The case officer in January requested the applicant carry out a master plan exercise for the development. My client has also endorsed the master plan and welcomed any collaboration on this. From my own experience of current developments in Gretna of similar size, such master plans are required, and indeed experience with other developments for planning permission in principle applications in Dumfries and Galloway, even for smaller sites, master plans are required. Why therefore is this different? Our client's request for a master plan is also to ensure that ability to access our client's ground to the west is not compromised and that Old Graitney Road can be upgraded to appropriate standards. This is all as requested in the LDP. We do not feel the report fully addresses these matters and in doing so provides a lesser visibility split to the access. A master plan exercise may have demonstrated that the sensible and safer access location for the site would have been further to the west and may also demonstrate that a more economic and effective development in terms of the amount of roadway to unit numbers can be provided when combined with the ground to the west. This may also assist with spreading costs for deficit funding issues, making a more viable development. As such, the boundary of GTN H5 simply provides a restriction on the development of the site. It may be the case in the future that our client progresses with an application under Policy H4 for the ground to the west, and if so, this may also help to avoid the 5-year housing land supply for an HMA slipping below 5 years, which at present is only 5.2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. You may take your seat, Andrew. He's reading a prepared statement. Could we have Craig Peacock, an objector, please? You got 5 minutes as well, Craig, and I'll let you know 30 seconds to go.
Sorry. Once I recognise that the site referred to in the application, GTNH5, is included in the LDP as an allocated housing site, there are many anomalies relating to the application that warrant further scrutiny from this committee that may not be apparent from the report before you. Firstly, GTNH5 is allocated for 45 units within the LDP. The application submitted, the design statement and the planning statement submitted from the applicant all refer to construction of 57 mainly two-storey properties. This is the application that all representations were based upon and not the one referred to in 1.3 of your report. Items 1.5 to 1.9 on page 26 of the report are all headed for the development of 57 properties and no provision of SUDs or open space. Item 1.10 of the report refers to an ecology survey. Members, I have to inform you that this report is irrelevant to the application as it is for a different site completely, namely GTN H6, south of Old Graitney Road, and should be dismissed from the application. Also of great concern is a letter from Robert Duncan, Planning Manager for Major Projects, advising the applicant that given that there is an aim to provide a phased development as well as the LDP aim, it is considered necessary in this case for a master planning approach to be undertaken. If the application is not withdrawn, it is likely to be recommended for refusal on the basis that it would be contrary to LDP policies on design quality of development, OP2 and open space CF3. The application was not withdrawn. 410 of the report is again misleading as its dismissal of the master plan approach, as again it refers to a different site that would not be part of the phased development. One of my biggest concerns is the open space strategy. 4.23 of the report states the settlement account for Gretna set out within the LDP supplementary guidance notes that the settlement has a lower quality of open space than the standard for Dumfries and Galloway and an absence of natural green spaces. The author of the report goes on to state that open space provision is acceptable. I completely disagree, as any open space shown is within the floodplain of the development and could not therefore possibly be of the standard as set in supplementary guidance. It must be noted that the final site layout submitted 2 months after the representations closed and still allocating 51 properties has been altered to a minimum amount to appease planning and not to satisfy LDP policy. LDP policy OP1 development consideration states development will be assessed against the following considerations with relevant to scale, nature and location. OP1A general amenity development proposal should be compatible with the character and amenity of the area. Potential loss of privacy, sunlight and daylight on nearby properties. 98% of the properties in the vicinity are single story. This application does conflict with this policy. OP1C landscape states the development proposal should respect, protect and enhance the landscape and reflect the scale and local distinctiveness of landscape. I suggest this statement has not been achieved by the application. Policy OP2 design quality of development. This has not been achieved due to proposed overdevelopment, massing character and is not sympathetic to local built forms. Policy CF3 open space has not been achieved. Policy IN9 wastewater. Whilst flood assessment has been carried out, this does not take into consideration flooding caused by overflowing wastewater systems, which has occurred on various occasions to which the fire brigade had to be called. Members, I ask that you refuse the current application on the grounds of the application not meeting the requirements of the policies mentioned and the misrepresented reports contained within the application, and ask that a master plan approach, as suggested by the planning manager, be adopted for future applications on the site, limiting the number of properties as set in the LDP. If members are minded to grant the application, I ask that you impose conditions on quantity and house type, i.e. single story, now to ensure development is in line with the adopted LDP. I fear that if you do not set these conditions now, it will be hard to argue against when it comes before reserved matters being decided. I am not against development of this site. I need to ensure development is in line with the local community and LDP policy.
30 seconds to go, Craig. No. Members, Archie.
Craig, I'm just you mentioned about the public consultation was on a certain number of houses, whereas this application is on a different number of houses. Can you sort of clarify what you said there?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the public consultation that was held within the Richard Greenhouse Centre and went through the proper channels. The site layout and the indicative plan that was proposed there was for 57 two-storey properties. It did not show any of the SUDs that you have on the layout that you have before you or any of the green space mentioned. So it was 57 two-storey properties with basically a straight road through. So what you see on that plan before you was not shown to the public in a pre-application proposal.
Can I come back to you on another question? Just looking at the application and the application site, you know, it is within the local development plan for build, and you mentioned about type of build that potentially we as an applications committee should put a condition on. What's the sort of the area around about that, like the housing stock and type there?
I don't know if the plan office, if you have a slide of the actual site rather than the layout, the site plan, the location plan. Do you have a location plan? I think I saw it earlier on. The application site, as you can see, is marked in red. All the properties immediately to the north and to the east of that proposal are all single-storey bungalows. Within the original layout that was shown in the papers, there's approximately 230 properties there, of which only 6 are two-storey houses.
Thank you. Members? Jane?
2 questions, please, Chairman, through you. I am very interested to hear about the claim that the extended phase ecology survey and protected species survey is for the wrong patch of ground. Is that really right? And the second question is I would like to really tease out the suggestion that Mr. Duncan, I don't know whether I've got this right, maybe you could help me on this, but basically the suggestion was that if there was no master plan, this should be refused. So could I have an answer to those two questions, please?
Craig?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as regard to the ecology statement, if you look at the paperwork that and the documents that were listed on the e-planning, to which members of the public and, of course, representatives had to look for, when you read through the ecology statement, it announces at the start of that statement that it is for site GTNH6, which is south of Old Graitney Road, and continuously through that ecology statement refers to site GTNH6. The application site is GTNH5, which is north of Old Graitney Road. So the ecology statement has been made for a separate site to the one that you are being asked to approve on today. Your second question, Councillor Maitland, referred to the letter from Peter Duncan. Again, it is in the information included on the e-planning side. And I have the letter here in front of me. Members may want to take time to look at that on another occasion. But the letter quite clearly states that it is noted that a two-phase development is proposed to the south of Old Graitney Road, which is not within the application site. And given that there is an aim to provide a phased development as well as the LDP aim of providing high-quality design within new development, taking into account of principles and aims of design streets, etc., it is considered necessary in this case for a master planning approach to be undertaken. And goes on to state, if the application is not withdrawn, the application is likely to be recommended for refusal. And I mentioned that in my statement.
Thank you. Ian?
Just in regards to flooding, as a local member there, Craig, I'm just wondering if you've got any, if you can give us any detail in regards to, is there flooding issues here? I mean, that ditch, it comes through there and it's identified on the proposed indicative layout as potentially being a place for green open space or even a play area. Have you got any local knowledge on that?
Through you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Carruthers, the particular ditch that runs to the west of the site there, on occasions it has flooded, and it floods right the way down through that ditch. And that was one of my main concerns. I mean, there has been a flood risk assessment done on the site, and I appreciate that, and that is also within the papers. But there are recommendations that come from that about floor heights, recommended floor heights and road heights as such, as well, as was mentioned by the previous objector. So there has been a study done. Again, that study was done on a different layout to the one that is put before you today, because it was done on for possible 57 properties. But yes, there is flooding that occurs within that ditch, and that is one of my main concerns with regard to the proposed open space of the development, that it is within the flood risk plain, and the open space that is shown on the site layout that was put before you has the opportunity of being flooded when that occurs. So that is one of my real concerns. I don't think that there's been enough consideration put into this particular application on the site to account for proper open space development, and even the SUDs, because there is no real mitigation as to the SUDs for a site of that size. It does conflict with the sort of flood risk assessment, which says it should be a two-stage SUDs pond.
Any other members? No. Thanks, Craig. You take your seat. Members? No, he doesn't need to see it as an individual. No. Members, we're now in session. Agent. Got that. John White. John White, please. Agent.
Chair, just a point. Craig Peacock's still sitting out. He's due to leave.
Craig is here as an individual objector, not as a councillor. I've asked for advice. I asked for advice on that, and that's advice I was given.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank John. Thanks, John. You've got 5 minutes. I'll let you know. 30 seconds to go.
I won't need that long. Really, just briefly, just wanted to endorse the officer's report to committee. The applicants worked closely with the local planning authority for quite a long period of time now to achieve a scheme that both the local authority and the applicant both now consider is acceptable on this allocated site. The report to committee confirms that all issues have been addressed. Importantly, confirms that there are no objections from any of the statutory consultees. I might just briefly take up a couple of points that have been made by the previous speakers. Mr. Clark indicated that there had been no provision for potential links to the west. And I think there are two potential links shown, both of which have been confirmed are achievable if at any point in time development to the west takes place. In terms of Mr. Peacock's points, the ecology survey has been submitted for this site, and I think Ms. Duff will confirm that. In terms of open space, this is an application in principle. Details of elements such as open space will be required, or certainly firmed up, when details are submitted as required by condition 1 of the committee report. That goes for the design, form and layout as well. I know there's an issue raised in terms of the properties being single story. I think importantly, development doesn't necessarily have to replicate exactly what is in the vicinity of a site. More important, I think, is any scheme being acceptable in terms of design and any impact on the amenity of local residents. So it's the applicant's view that two-storey properties, there may well be bungalows, again, this will be confirmed at the detailed design stage, but the applicants of the view that two-storey properties can be achieved on the site without impacting necessarily on the amenity of adjoining residents. The initial scheme submitted did relate to 57 dwellings. The applicant was requested to reduce that to 51, which obviously has been done. That was that revised plan was re-notified. There may have been a concern if the quantum of development had been increased following the initial public consultation process, but obviously it's gone down, which is less of an issue. The nature of the beast is, after the initial public consultation process, when the application is submitted, invariably negotiations take place between the applicant and officers, and more often than not, changes take place to the details that were originally shown as part of the public consultation exercise. At no point were we asked to prepare a master plan to accompany the application. I think, again, more importantly, is for the applicant to demonstrate that approval of a scheme on this site doesn't compromise any future development of land to the west or the allocated site to the south, which may or may not come forward at a future date. I think that's pretty much it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Members? Any points? Ian?
Just to expand in regards to there was mention of potential conflict that could be mitigated against there'd be two-storey overlooking single-storey. Just how would you go about that?
When the detailed design layout is submitted, the separation distances required between properties bordering the site and new properties will be agreed with officers. So any potential for overlooking a loss of privacy can be mitigated at the detailed design stage. Yes, the separation distances.
Patsy?
Can I just ask about the green space provision?
Yes. Green space, there is a requirement for green space on the site. The precise location of that has yet to be determined. That'll be determined when the conditions required by the details required by condition 1 are submitted. So the precise location and form of that open space will be determined then.
Members? Right, thank you, John. You may go back to your seat.
Thank you.
Members are now in session.
Thanks very much, Chair. Obviously, in the ward, I've got some concerns about this application. Obviously, the objector has raised some real concerns about policies actually being followed, whether that be the case or not. And quite rightly, he stated that within the local development plan, there is space for 45 as far as the local development plan is a suggestion. To ask for 51 over 6 over and above the actual applications, and within that particular area, two-storey buildings in principle, then that would give me great concern. I do know that the burn, when you look at the actual site at the moment, where it comes from, if you look to the north on that slide as it is at the moment, the drain would actually go through the middle of the two blue houses just south of the two green houses at the top there, and that would cause you concern as it has done in other areas in Dumfries and Galloway, in particular in Dumfries, up in Terregles area, where there's been flooding in that particular area because of the drainage situation there. So there is some concerns here. Now, I'm not in any way against the application, but the numbers do concern me.
Archie, can I just stop you there? The application is not given. There's no numbers on the thing. It's just for residential development, land north of Old Graitney Road, Gretna.
It shows a layout of 51
but, as I say, but that's the thing. But what we're looking at is just a residential development.
Yeah. Well, the situation, Chair, does cause me concern, and perhaps one of the conditions that we could be putting on, if we do agree, and I'll be listening to other people talk, if we do agree that the conditions would be that no more than 45 would actually be put on this land, and it would be single-storey or single-and-a-half-storey houses that we would suggest going forward. But I will listen to other people and then make a decision that way, Chair.
David?
Thank you, Chair. It's just really to clarify this, that although maybe a lot has been made of the indicative layout, which you're seeing on the slide there, probably the more accurate slide to show up is the first one, which is just the red line around the site, because the application is not in the description for a specific number of houses. Obviously, the developer has tried to demonstrate a density value that they think they could actually put on the site. That went from the pre-application consultation at 57, has come down. But in terms of what the committee is deciding today, you have an application for planning permission in principle before you that is solely for the principle of residential development on the land. And it's quite within your gift as a committee to say it shall be no more than X number of houses, or it shall be single storey only. You've obviously heard the justification from the agent why they think that they could reasonably put that number of houses in. But equally, you've also heard concerns from officers about the layout not conforming with designing streets and issues about where the open space would be and so on. So it's entirely up to yourselves. If you are minded to approve it, you could quite legitimately put in a condition either saying it shall be no more than X houses, or say that, for the avoidance of doubt, no number is specified here. So you're just establishing the principle of residential development on the site rather than a specific layout or number.
Thanks for that explanation, Chair. And I'm pleased that David's here at times to give us that information, and we actually follow, and follow and understand what he's actually saying. I know it's planning in principle, and that's what I said. That I'm not going to say either I'm for or against the application, because I think it's needed in the area, but it's about where we actually go. But I wanted to hear other members before I make a decision. Thanks.
Gail?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Mr. Sutty's clarified some of the points or issues that I had anyway, and I'm very grateful for that. I think, as you say, it is just a planning in principle, which drives me nuts at the best of times. They always do. I hate not having detail. I mean, I'm minded to follow the lines of the local development plan and put a limited number on it as per the LDP. And I think that would probably suit the site better, and I would also be minded to put a caveat on that it would need, the houses would need to be single storey or a storey and a half of bottom floor with dormers, if you want to call it that, if we could do that within the conditions. At any point does this come back to committee, or do what we decide today is binding and final? Because I notice there are a lot of conditions. Will it ever come back to committee again, or will it all be dealt with under delegation hereafter?
David?
In terms of the scheme of delegation, the application is before you today because it is a major application. Strictly speaking, if it was the case that there was a number of objections, 6 or more, to an application for matter specified by conditions, then that would come back to yourselves. But equally, if members were minded to minute now that you would wish this to come back before you regardless, then effectively that's like a call-in by committee, so you would get an opportunity to see it again.
Councillor Blake?
Thank you. I'm a bit concerned about the letter that was referred to, the one that was sent by Robert Duncan, the planning manager. saying that the requirement of a master plan and that failure to provide that would probably lead to it being refused. And yet there'd been absolutely no mention of that in the report itself. I appreciate it's on the e-planning system, but there's no mention of that there. I'd like some guidance in that. And also the second part on the ecology survey being referred to, but it's on the wrong site. What weight do we look at that?
David?
I think I'll have to pass to Vary on those two, I'm afraid.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, the letter which went out, which was at the beginning of the application when it first came in, was because the applicant has submitted quite a lot of information with the application, which included information about land to the south, which is also allocated for housing. And it appeared to me that there was a kind of an intention to also develop that site as well. So that's why I asked for a master plan for both sites to be submitted. But subsequent to that, I had a meeting with the applicant and his agent, and it transpired that no, they were only applying for this site at this stage. The LDP doesn't ask for a master plan to be submitted for this site. So in that case, and because we don't think that the development of this site would necessarily prejudice the development of the land to the south or indeed the land to the west, we considered that in this case a master plan isn't required. However, as I'd said previously, we have asked for a condition for not called a master plan, I haven't called it that, but I've called it a design brief, which requires the applicant to take account of the adjoining site in the design details submitted with the next application. With regard to the next question about the ecology survey, yeah, that was again in relation to the amount of information that was submitted with the application. They submitted an ecology survey for land to the south of Graitney Road, but also there was an extended phase 1 and protected species survey of land at Gretna, and that is actually for the land to the north. So there was one that's submitted for the land to the north. This confused me a little bit as well, so yeah.
Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair. And after listening to what's been said in that, I'm willing to sort of go with the recommendation. However, I would put a couple of conditions on, which be that any application, a full planning application, should have the no more than the allotted units in the local development plan. Any planning permission would be granted only at story and a half, and any future full application would come back to this planning applications committee for consideration.
Any member otherwise minded? Ian Krause?
I think my personal view in regard to this, I think if I'm happy with the restriction to the allocation in regards to the local development plan, master plan approach, I did have issues over that, but they've been clarified by Vary. But I felt it would be more appropriate for the story and a half. I think it should be story and a half at a maximum ridge height or design in regards to the ones that are overlooking the houses. There maybe should be a degree of flexibility in regards to the houses that move away, because the overlooking would be finished at that point. But the houses that are currently built, I don't know if it's worth, I mean, certainly open to the views of Archie in regards to being the mover of the motion, but I think the restriction of story and a half should be in relation to what's adjacent to the existing properties rather than carte blanche across the whole site, or it would then restrict, I mean, it would be applied to the next site as it starts to develop and go further. I think that would have an adverse effect that way. So I would hope that Archie would listen to my comments in regards to that.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering how on the back of that we could factor in the consideration for the designing streets in terms of that approach be taken so as to address some of the described drainage and open space issues that have been brought out in the debate. I'm sort of a wee bit wary about setting a limit in terms of how many floors or stories or 1.5 stories or whatever, because it's going to come back to this committee anyway. So I mean that's going to come out in a good quality design. I'd be worried we would be prejudicing against something that could be very appropriate, because but then we've set a limit on what can be done. So just wondering how that could be fitted in.
Jim?
I would like to see what I would consider a degree of consistency, because in the past, in certain circumstances, we have asked for a master plan when an area is being developed rather than piecemeal, and I would hope that either that's a mechanism we employ all the time, or at all, it shouldn't be dependent upon which case officer is allocated a piece of work, and I would just look to hopefully bottom that out.
Gail?
Sorry, it's just on the back of Councillor Crothers' comments. Looking at that plan, actually, that there are areas within that site that would accommodate two-storey houses without it being a huge issue to the rest of the site. It's, as he says, it's the ones that are overlooked by the single-storey houses at the moment that are the issue. If it's going to come back to us, and if we insist that it comes back to us, perhaps it would be better not to completely restrict the site to a single or storey and a half, and hope that the developer and their designers show an element of imagination, yes, that's a good way to describe it, in putting two stories in certain areas and single stories in others, rather than nailing that down today.
Jane, I'll let you in first.
Point's been covered. I agree with that.
Covered. Archie?
Thanks. You're happy to take the views from Councillor Pillars and Councillor McGregor about the potential for two-storey. If applications are coming back here, then I think it's appropriate that's actually in there. But I would take cognizance of those closer to the existing buildings as well. So if applications are coming back to this, I'm happy to go with that.
Jim?
Just a throwaway word for Archie and colleagues. We don't want to be sitting here trying to design the scheme for an applicant, and I think the guidance should be given from this committee what type of development we want to see, rather than get into an argument when an application arrives about where two-storey should or should not be. That there's a real issue here about us trying to do professional work with the proposal that's been put forward today.
I'm happy to take the Vice Chair's advice, Chair, but obviously it's no Sanker we're talking about, it's Gretna we're talking about here.
I designed the Haley Sanker here.
That's it. Vary?
Thanks. I just thought it might be worth clarifying condition 2, which requires the submission of a development brief to be submitted. It refers to matters referred to in note 2, which is attached to the appendix, and that would be in a decision notice. This note doesn't come through in the committee report, but it would be in a decision notice, and the requirements of that sort of set out what we would want to see in a development brief. And what it says is that the development brief should include matters including development that takes account of the site context, including the adjacent allocated site and non-allocated sites, and how this accords with designing streets and related guidance. Also, identifying and positively addressing the opportunities and constraints of the site and its context, including matters of flood risk management, drainage, ecology, access, amenity, including neighbouring and within the site, neighbouring properties and those within the site, and open space in a holistic manner within the overall layout and design, applying designing streets, designing places and related guidance, and also a parking strategy designed to meet the needs of the development as well as minimise the visual impact. So that just gives an idea of what we would expect from a development brief.
Jim?
I think, Chair, if we focus on the 45 allocated houses for this site, that in itself will lead to a lower development density and possibly a lower height on some of the properties anyway.
Stephen?
I think just given what Mary's pointed out there, I would go with the recommendations as they are, on the understanding that it's coming back to this committee, because everything that has, all the concerns that have been raised would seem to be included in the appendix, which is referred to in the conditions.
I want it noted though. Archie? You still like that noted?
Chair, I put a recommendation forward to go with the recommendation, apart from making sure that that lot is 45 for the LDP, and now that's involved in it, that's fine. I haven't got a problem with that type of thing. That's been, I believe it's been seconded, and the reference to storage has been withdrawn, so therefore that's covered in the note that Vary actually says. I'm happy to go with the recommendations, but any application comes back here to full applications.
Mhm. Decision is 45 units or no. Yep. Members agreed? Could you read it? Aye, I'm just got to confirm these. Can you confirm?
And confirm that this decision has been made to follow officers' recommendations and approve, subject to the successful completion of Section 75 planning obligation within 6 months of the date of the decision or such other reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer and conditions, and also to confirm that there will be no more than 45 units.
And any full
Chair,
application comes back here.
Yeah, that would be an additional condition to the conditions in the report that for the avoidance of doubt, the number of units on the site shall not exceed 45 as set out in the LDP. And then it wouldn't actually be a condition requiring it to come back to committee. That would just be a separate part of the minute that requiring any application for approval of matters specified by conditions to come to committee.
Thank you. Can we go on to item 6, the land adjacent to Leswalt Parish Church, Challoch, Leswalt, 15/B/1/0138. It's a major application. And we've got Dean Clapworthy speaking to this. You on, Dean? You'll get your dinner at 1 o'clock. Once I get rid of the speaking one. Get through this quick.
Okay, thanks. This is a location plan for the proposed site. It extends to 3.6 hectares and it's bounded to the west by existing suburban development and Leswalt Parish Church, which is a Category B listed building, and more recent suburban development on the opposite side to the north of the B798 main road that would serve to form, well, the access will be formed off this road into this site. As noted in the report, it's an application that's previously been approved by Planning Applications Committee. It's also allocated in the current local development plan, as it was also allocated in the previous Wigtonshire local plan. This was an indicative layout that was provided on the previous application, purely for illustrative purposes, just to demonstrate to committee, because committee had asked for it to show that the site could potentially accommodate 56 units and areas of open space and landscaping. Just to note, this wasn't actually approved as part of the approved document. It was only the location plan with the red edge that was approved. Just to take you through the site photographs. This is the existing farm to the immediate east of the site. Just looking there from the B798 across the hedgerow that forms the boundary at the moment. That's just panning right, so you're starting to look across the sort of southern part of the site, and you can see the ground rises steeply beyond the back of the site. And then this is just panning further right, so you can see the site frontage with the B798 road formed by the hedgerow, and in the background there you've got the existing dwellings that form the western boundary on Church Grove and also Leswalt Parish Church. This is flipping round, so we've moved slightly further west along the B798. I'm looking back east towards a bend in the road where the site boundary will come to meet the frontage. And you can see indicated there the site frontage formed by the existing hedgerow. And then this is just panning further left, but moving again further west, and you've got the existing fairly recent residential development there on the left-hand side, and the site frontage are indicated on the right. This is going to the opposite end of the site, so we're looking up the western boundary formed by the dike, and you can just about see the east elevation of Leswalt Parish Church there, and the residential development behind it. And that's just getting a better view of the eastern elevation of Leswalt Parish Church as it looks towards it, and it's very close to the boundary with the site. And this is just a view in the residential environment behind the church to the south of the church, existing single-storey houses, a fairly typical design. That's it as far as the presentation is concerned. It's the full planning history and the status of the site is provided in the report. As I said, it's currently allocated 56 units in the local development plan. It's previous approval for the site given by this committee. The application, because of the nature of the application, is to amend condition 1 that was attached to the previous permission that set a time limit. The applicant's looking for another 3 years, so it's akin to reconsidering the application as if it was an application to renew planning permission. As stated, the site remains to be allocated, and as such, a principle of development is established and is unchallengeable. Having assessed the proposal against the present LDP policies, it's recommended that the proposal will be approved subject to conclusion of a planning obligation to achieve up to 20% affordable housing, which equates to 11 units in these circumstances, and the conditions are provided in the report.
Members of the session, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Just to be absolutely clear, please, Dean, this is really redoing what we did before, and it's in principle only, and it's to some extent similar to the previous application where we're actually renewing the application for a residential site. It's not specifying, we don't have anything in front of us saying there are going to be 56 units and this is a layout. I just want to be absolutely clear about that.
The way, what the applicant's applied for is to modify condition 1 that was applied to the previous planning permission. So it's exactly the same application, because all they're applying for is to modify condition 1 to give a further 3 years. But just to be clear, the description of the development that was approved by committee included a reference to the number of dwellings, and that's not for reconsideration at this point, because they're just applying to have the timescale extended, they've not applied for a new development. It's the same development that was previously approved and as described as in the previous approval, just to give it a further extension of 3 years for the implementation of it.
Ian? Thank you, Chair. So any specific development would have to come back here.
It would have, as with the previous application, it would have to come in as a further application for approval of matters specified in conditions. That wouldn't necessarily, under the scheme of delegation, come back to this committee unless members, as with the previous one, were minded to remove the delegation for any future application.
Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's suggested condition 6 are on page 53 on the basis that if the application were to be approved. Reference is made there to the upgrading works to the Leswalt wastewater treatment works and the Loch Ryan Shellfish Waters Improvement Scheme. What sort of timescale, Chair, or projected timescale are we talking about for the completion of these works?
Dean?
I don't have an answer to that because Scottish Water haven't provided a consultation response on this application, because what they were seeking was an extension to the commencement period. So we've taken the previous comments of Scottish Water as provided to the previous application and moved them forward into this recommendation.
Alistair?
Well, but let's hypothesise for a moment, Chair, and say in fact that the application is granted today and that we're further on down the line, as it were, sort of detailed proposals. How would any such consent then be implemented if you're putting in a suspensive condition and we don't really have any ideas, the timescale that's involved in that? That, to me, I might be getting hold of the wrong end of the stick. It'll not be the first time, Chair, but, as I say, I would like some clarification on that, if I may.
David?
Chair, unless I'm mistaken, that condition was attached to the previous permission, and therefore, as Dean was saying, it's automatically rolled forward into this one as well. And that issue has not been addressed. It was really only the issue of condition 1, which was the timescale, which has been the focus of this application. All the previous requirements are effectively rolled out or revised in another form.
Alistair?
Would it perhaps be more appropriate, sir, to revisit it during the debate stage? Because I would like to make further comment which would be inappropriate at this stage for obvious reasons.
That's fine. No one else? Right. A statement being read by David on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Rickson, an objector.
Thank you, Chair. This is a slightly unusual...
5 minutes, David, I'll let you know if you have a second to go.
I'll explain first. It's a slightly unusual request, this, because Mr. and Mrs. Rickson were objectors. They're from 3 Mansfield Place, Leswalt. Because Mr. Rickson has a chronic illness, he was unable to attend because his wife, Mrs. Rickson, is his carer. They couldn't find anybody else who was willing to speak on their behalf. There were no other speakers. So unusually, I've agreed to read this for them. It is unfortunately 3 long pages, so I will try and get through it in 5 minutes. So this is Mrs. Rickson writing. There are, of course, many personal issues that would arise if this development goes ahead, not least of which the effect on Mr. Rickson's health. He has a chronic illness which is exacerbated by stress. Long hours of construction will, we have no doubt, have a vast impact on his already fragile health. We purchased our property in Mansfield Place as our retirement home. It is a single-storey property, ideal for my husband and his disability. We currently have a lovely view from the rear of our property overlooking the rolling hills, which will be completely obliterated if this proposed development is allowed to go ahead. Personal issues aside, there are many other reasons why building 56 houses in Leswalt would be unacceptable, the majority of which, you will see below, go against the Scottish planning policy and land development policy. Number 1. In the proposed plan, the children's play area and amenity areas have been placed right next to the B798. There is an extremely busy road. There is an enormous amount of farm traffic, large tractors and trailers, harvesters, cattle lorries, etc., as well as a large amount of traffic going to the old refuse tip. The original approval for this application stated that the traffic would decrease once the new refuse tip opened, but this has not been the case. Also, having the play area so close to the local church is totally inappropriate. The noise from the play area would be very disturbing for funeral goers, as would the construction noise during the building of these houses. 2. There are currently in the region of 200 properties for sale in Stranraer, Leswalt and Kirkcaldy areas, some of which are empty. A large number of these houses have been on the market for some time, and therefore building a further 56 new houses would seem inappropriate. If the council wishes to build more social housing, they should purchase some of the properties currently on sale. Social housing in Leswalt would be too remote from all amenities and would isolate its occupants from support, transport, shops, medical care, etc. Although we appreciate that social housing is needed, a village environment is not ideal. These houses need to be built in a town where the occupants will have easy access to the support they need. The cost to Scotland of putting social housing in a small village would be exponential. 3. The effect of this development on the surrounding area would be considerable and increase the number of homes in Leswalt by 25%. The village cannot sustain such a large number of additional homes, and building 2-storey houses in an area which is previously only 1 or 1.5 stories has been allowed is unacceptable. It would not enhance the area's natural beauty and would overshadow our lovely historic church. 4. Looking at the details of the Scottish planning policy, we feel that the regeneration of Stranraer should be priority. The policy states that the right development should be located in the right place with a choice of how to access amenities and services. There are none of those in Leswalt, they are all in Stranraer. Clause 16 of the SPP will not be achieved by extending this planning consent for a further 3 years. This application will not provide the confidence required to secure private sector investment, as no one in the private sector wants to build this development. It will certainly not create employment and benefit-related businesses in Leswalt, as there are none. Clause 21 of the SPP, there will not be a healthy ecosystem in Leswalt if these properties are built. They will only create more pollution, cause issues with an already overworked sewage system, and we think you should read Clause 29 of the SPP before making your decision on the extension of this planning consent. 5. Set out below are extracts from the land development policy, which we believe should be taken into account in granting, should not have been taken into account in granting original planning consent, but which should be taken into account with the current application. 1. Avoid using prime agricultural land. Maximise the use of existing infrastructure. Local development plan vision will not be met under the current planning application. Housing developments should be of a scale appropriate to their location. Increasing the number of homes in Leswalt by 25% will certainly not be an appropriate scale. There should be a range of services and facilities to help support local community. There are none, and none are planned.
30 seconds, David.
There should be an access to a wide range of good quality sport, recreation, and leisure facilities. Again, none exist or are planned. Development proposals should be protected to enhance the character of the... I'm not going to be able to achieve it, sorry, in 30 seconds. But it sums up, this development goes against the above, and the council is going, and if the council is going to adhere to all Scottish planning and land policies, this planning application should be refused.
Thank you, David. We've got not got the applicant here. Members, we're now in session. Alistair.
It was just basically to go back to the point I made, Chair. You know, notwithstanding Mr. and Mrs. Rickson's letter of representation, I personally feel that the application before us today should be approved on the basis of the case officer's recommendations. But it's just going back to the issue of item number 6. You know, we may be approving something today which is not, it's unimplementable on the basis of, you know, lack of clarity and lack of information on the timescale that's been proposed in that. So as I say, as always, interested to hear other members' views, Chair. But as I say, my view is that, you know, inclined to support it. In fact, no problems in supporting it on the basis suggested. But really, I think we could do with some form of clarification as to the timescale that's involved here.
Dean?
As I say, Scottish Water didn't come back. It's exactly the same condition that was applied last time round, and I'm not aware that the question of timescales of those commitments being sought at that time. So I've moved it forward with the lack of Scottish Water's consultation response, because last time round it was seen as being acceptable, and the committee was obviously satisfied with it at that time.
Alistair?
Be able to make the observation that because we're following precedent, Chair, it maybe doesn't necessarily make it right. But as I say, I'm interested to hear other members' or other colleagues' comments.
Ian, Dick?
Thanks, Chair. I very much remember it was one of the first planning applications I ever sat on when it was way back over at Wigton, and it was a development of 73 houses, and I believe I moved refusal at the time, and indeed that's what happened. Went to appeal, and the reporter, on the basis that's outlined here, upheld the committee's decision. I think more specifically it was on the basis that there was a 10-metre rule which it infringed upon because of the number of units. But the point I made at the time, and it still stands, they were trying to put 50% of the development in that village and 20% of its area, which was clearly an overdevelopment. At the time, I can remember a lot of the speakers had suggested that they would have been happier with something in the region of about 37 to 40. So the application that came back in principle was now 56, which I think there was still some
some concern about that it was overdevelopment. However, on the basis that this is almost similar to the previous one, and it's only a variation of condition 1, I think we would have to accept that, with the proviso that it's minuted that any further application comes back here as a matter of course. I would very much want to see that. The point that Councillor Geddes was making is also quite relevant, because 8 years ago there was a problem of development in Stranraer North Rins because of the water situation, which now Scottish Water have been working on for some time. I think it would be very helpful to know actually whether, because as far as I know it's nearing completion, but I haven't had any indication of when exactly that is going to be complete and how it infringes on development at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Ian Crothers.
Thanks, Chairman. I thought it was, I agree with the recommendations of what's been put forward by Dean in regards to this, but I think Alistair brings up an interesting point, because that condition, if it's fully suspensive, if they can't get some kind of agreement with Scottish Water, it may well be a developer's contribution that they'll have to go forward in that, but there may well be other potential solutions, not necessarily Scottish Water, and that's the bit where, does it pass the reasonable test, is what reasonableness test is what went through my mind when it comes to that, because Scottish Water isn't the only solution to the treating of effluent. So, that's the point. I was looking at it more from that kind of angle, as what Alistair's saying.
David?
Well, it's really just to reiterate, Chair, that condition 6 was attached when the application was approved by committee last time. That application, this current application, is only focusing on the original condition 1, and therefore it's not really open to us to re-examine that. In attaching it again, if the applicant feels there is an issue with that condition, they obviously have the opportunity to either appeal that condition or to submit another application under section 42 to have that condition struck. So it's really for, as much as anything, because they haven't applied to have anything done to that condition, for consistency, we're putting it back on. They didn't challenge it last time. If they consider that there is a problem this time, they obviously have the opportunity to do that. But my view with this one is that in the absence of Scottish Water having come back to us and giving us any further comments on this, best left alone in the meantime.
Patsy?
Yes, it's just a question. I have no problem with the recommendation, but the reason it's here, it says at 1.3, which is on page 44 at the very top, that the applicant states that this is sought owing to the economic downturn preventing development of the site. I just wonder how many times that can be used as a reason to come back. Is it ad infinitum, or does there come a time when we say, well, actually, maybe this is not a site that's going to be developed? I don't know, I'm interested.
It's a very valid question, actually. There are a number of what are colloquially known as bank vault permissions, where somebody has got a permission which they've used as collateral for loans or other things that they have no intention of ever developing. Now, these are what are known as ineffective sites. Now, this is why, in planning terms, there's no reason why we should doubt what they're saying this time round. It's in the LDP, but if there's, at the end of the current LDP's time, there is still no movement on this one, it's sort of one we would want to tease out, is it an effective site? Because we don't want to have land that's identified in development plans that's just never going to happen, because that's really not in anybody's interest. So I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt at the moment, but ultimately you're right. And this is why the LDP team have actually been phoning up people who have got sites identified in the plan, just making sure that they are intending to actually promote this as an active site.
Members agree with the recommendations, but with Ian's.
No, I just wanted to make the point. I know it's not for this one. I think we have to agree this, but the reasons I gave for back in 2007 for refusal will still stand if an application comes back, and that's the density, number of units, and the road issues which I identified at the time. Those would have to be addressed. So that's just a marker for the future.
Right, you would confirm the decision, Lucia?
Members have decided to follow the officer's recommendation to approve, subject to the successful completion of Section 75 planning obligation within 6 months of the date of the decision or such other reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer and conditions.
If members agreed, we'll take a break, half-hour break for lunch and a comfort break. Like Patsy needs it. Quarry, Powfoot Annan, number 15/P/4/0104. We've got Barry Duff speaking in this one.
Like, I apologise for lateness earlier. I missed the declarations of interest. Just in regards to this one, declarable interest in the fact that I've declared this before, that I've got an account holding contract in, that's who's making the application, but I'll certainly look to participate within the actual as it goes through. It's not such that it's a conflict of interest. Again, I've got no remit over this site or any dealings with the company other than, so it's no different for me being a customer of Tesco's, I don't think.
Don't know if you know as well, Ian, there's an exempt item being brought in at the end of the meeting.
Made aware of that through the dinner break, and I'll be staying for that, Chairman.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. The application site is located just to the east of Powfoot, about a kilometre from Powfoot village. It's bounded on most sides by agricultural land to north, west and east. Or to the east, I should say, actually, is the Broome Industrial Estate. It's on the former MOD site, munitions site. To the south is the Solway Firth, as you can see. The access to the site is from the road which leads from the B724 road, the low road, Tannin, down to Newby. And the access is also shared by the Broome Industrial Estate and Fisheries. The application site is highlighted in red, and this shows it in the context of the SSSIs and other natural heritage designations which there are around the site, primarily centred on the Solway Firth. That's the area that's hatched, I should say. And there is also a SSSI to the east of the site. The main natural heritage interest here is the presence of natterjack toads, which have been found on the existing quarry area to the south of the site, and as a result there was a nature conservation area set up, constructed, which was various ponds and habitat for natterjack toads, and which prevented their migration into the quarry, but stopped, but allowed them back into the conservation area. The site covers an area of 51 hectares, with 28.5 of those being for extraction. It was initially established in 1997, and there have been two. We'll move on to the next slide, which shows that there have been two planning permissions on the site, one to the south, which was the original one in 1996, and the area in green shows where the conservation area is, and to the north, which was recently renewed in 2013 to allow for an additional year of extraction. The processing equipment still exists in the area in purple, and there are also stockpiles as well still existing from the extraction from the 2013 permission. As you can see also from the slide, there is quite a substantial woodland belt to the western edge of the application site, and also running through the centre of the site from east to west. The phasing of the extraction would be over 4 phases, and this would be over a 24-year period as well, which is what the application is for. The idea is for a sort of progressive restoration in line with the extraction. Phase 1 would progress in a northerly direction. Moving on to phase 2, and the soils from phase 1 would then be used for the restoration of phase 1, along with the quarry, part of the quarry slope would be retained as habitat for nesting birds. You can see there as well that part of the woodland belt to the central area of the site would be removed as part of this. There would also be an extension to the existing screen bund to the north of the site. This would give visual screening as well as sound, a noise barrier as well. Phase 3 would then move southwards, and there would be some restoration of the woodland belt to the centre. And phase 4 would then move northwards again, and that would complete the extraction area. The restoration of the site is based on agricultural land use restoration, which would include landscaping and which would go some way to mitigate for the loss of the trees. Also, there would be an extension to the wildlife area to the south, with extension to the ponds, and to provide a bit more of a continuation into the SSSI. Some photos of the site. This is from Broom Cottage, which is to the north. The main landscape impact is really the loss of the trees to the centre, which are quite a prominent skyline element. So that would be the main impact. Otherwise, the development itself wouldn't cause a significant impact. From the C34A, which is the road going to Powfoot to the west of the site, you can see the woodland belt to the edge of the site, which wouldn't be touched and would be enhanced as part of the proposals. And within Powfoot, you can see there's a house to the left-hand side, which is the sort of edge of Powfoot village itself, and you can see that there's an existing stockpile, which you might be able to see behind the sand dunes. You can also see some of the processing equipment from this view as well. And another view from Powfoot, just further into Powfoot, and again you can see some of the activities that are within the quarry, which is the stockpile and processing equipment. Well, yeah, yeah, no comment. So the application is recommended for approval, subject to various conditions, and also subject to the completion of a Section 75 agreement, which would require a restoration bond to be put in place to cover the cost of restoration should the development not be completed or restored. Thank you.
Point of clarity. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Just a query relating to 2.6 on page 61. The council archaeologist's submission. The extension of sand and gravel quarrying will lead to the removal of the factory structures. Now, I'm assuming this is only part of the factory, that there will still be some evidence of the ordnance factory retained. Is that correct?
Well, within the site itself, what I understand is that all the above ground structures have been removed. There aren't any of those existing, but there are some underground structures. I think the archaeologist is fairly content that most buildings have been recorded, and that, as far as that satisfied them. This is just talking about the site itself. I don't know whether beyond the boundaries of it there are other buildings which would be retained. I think there are others which are still in existence, but certainly the archaeologist was satisfied that as long as there is recording, which has actually already taken place, that is, they're happy with that.
I would certainly like to think that some evidence of that factory can be retained, because in its day it was one of the most important ordnance factories in Britain. It was responsible, I understand, for virtually all the production of propellant for small arms ammunition. And that was the case from 1940 right up to its closure in the early 90s. Also, a number of people did lose their lives on that site. So it is of some considerable historical significance.
David?
Unless things have changed in the last few years, certainly when I visited the adjoining site, there are still definitely evidence of above ground parts of the building. I think, as various slides have shown, there really isn't very much evidence that this existed on this particular site, which is under consideration today.
Ian?
Excuse me, that's just the point I was going to come in on as regards to that. I've been on the site on many occasions, and it is the place in particular that's outlined in red that's been applied for today is probably about a third of the size of the original site, and it's mainly been Greenland area. When you actually see that, and it's there's a lot of existing buildings from the 40s or 30s, whenever they were built, in regards to the ammunition factories it was previously its land use. So there's still a lot of historical evidence there, and what Jim's bringing up, I think it's relevant as well, because it was one of the most important ammunition factories in the UK. I mean, I've not got any issues in regards to the actual application itself. Every now and again you do see something getting uncovered, and it has been, David said, it's been underground, it's foundations and things like that, drainage, but other than that, it's just that there's still a lot of buildings just to show that the factory was there at one time.
Jane?
Just about the 7,000-year-old tree trunks. The council archaeologist talks in the very last bit of their piece of information there is that the applicant should be informed of the archaeological interest. How do we monitor that the working procedures will actually respect that? How does that happen? Page 62, just the end of 2.6.
Recommended condition 12 is requiring a scheme to actually demonstrate the potential, how to minimise the potential impacts on the submerged prehistoric forest remains. So we need to have details of that as they go.
I appreciate that, but it's the monitoring of it. Does anybody go and look? Do you know about that?
You know what I'm going to say. In terms of resources, we have 2.5 planning inspectors for the whole area. Certainly, they are required to adhere to that, and I would imagine the archaeologist would have an interest in that as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's just on the restoration bond. I'm just wondering how that works. Do we take in money, or is it an agreement in principle that there will be funds made available? How do you work that? Because I can see how each phase is going to be done, but I'm just kind of anxious that when we get to the last one, it might not be finished.
Yeah.
There's a number of different ways you can do restoration bonds, and that's why it's been deliberately left open to actually have negotiations as to which is the preferred option. The most common way historically was actually, it's effectively like an insurance policy. You would have a company which would underwrite the restoration, and like, for example, at Glenmuckloch, you then call down on that bond in the case that you actually need to carry out the restoration yourself. As those are becoming increasingly difficult to get hold of, what is being looked at is a thing called an escrow account, which is a sort of pay-as-you-go. That this is probably the most common way these days, where you actually, the biggest threat is where there's the maximum void, where most land has actually been dug up. So they don't actually pay an awful lot to begin with up front, but it's an increasing amount until you've actually got the maximum void, and then the level of payment that goes into this account decreases until at the end of the day, if it's not required, it then goes back.
Yeah, other member? Yeah.
It's a sensitive subject up your way, Patsy. We've had 2 open cast mines where the firms have gone bust on each occasion. The restoration bond hasn't been sufficient to carry out the work, and it's caused real problems. And my only hope is that we've learned from that experience, and we now ensure that the amount of money committed is absolutely enough to reinstate the land in the event of the organisation will be able to complete that work.
Chair, just a quick comment on that. In In fact, the Glenmucklock one was, in Scottish terms, very successful, but it did highlight the whole issue, and heads of planning in Scotland, along with the Scottish Government, have been looking at this in some depth. And indeed, there was a whole document produced on best practice for restoration bonds, which I passed on to Varney for this very application.
I'm not getting into debate with David, but there's a huge hole left in the ground because we were successful in drawing down the bond, the £9 million, or 8.3 or whatever it was, but the cost was 20. So we weren't successful because we didn't manage an estimation of the amount of money it would cost, and fuel escalation at that time, etc., impacted on that. And all I'm saying is we need to be careful when we're doing it, because otherwise the same thing will happen again.
Stephen, point of clarification for Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's actually just to do with the consultations with Council Roads Officer and Transport Scotland and the vehicle movements. Obviously in the report it's talking about 3.5 deliveries per hour, etc., and 0.3% of traffic on the A75. But I think one of the key things that I would have thought would have been considered is the impact of the tonnage that's actually been moved within those 3.5 vehicles per hour, or 0.3% of traffic. So if you're talking about 100,000 tonnes per year, I think it refers to somewhere else in the report, is this our only opportunity to maybe allow for some form of contribution through Section 75 to contributing towards the state of the roads, especially in the local area near the access to the site?
Take that one.
Yes, you could do. It's whether or not the actual level of works here are going to be such to make that a valid term to apply to it. You would normally use Section 69 of the Local Government Act to have that dealt with, or indeed Section 96 of the Road Act to cover that. It's just whether or not it's directly attributable and whether it's reasonable to attach such a thing. The comments that we've got from the roads officers tend to imply it's not going to be, such a the level of traffic is that it's not causing them undue concern. Certainly, roads officers haven't actually recommended that we go down this route, whereas things such as quarries and certainly wind farms, they often do require such a thing.
Thank you, David. No other members now in session. Archie.
Agree the recommendations, Chair.
Agreed. We confirm the decision, Lucy.
Confirm that members have agreed to follow the officer's recommendation to approve, subject to the successful completion of Section 75 planning obligation within 6 months of the date of the decision, or such other reasonable extended timescale as agreed by the appointed officer, and conditions.
Thank you, Lucy. Now on to item 8 on the agenda, land at Stapleton Grange, Annan, number 15/B/4/0168, and we've got Andrew Robinson and going through this one. So whenever you're ready, Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 3 houses and the formation of an access. The site is situated adjacent to a steading development at Stapleton Grange, which is situated on the northern side of the B6357 road, around 2 kilometres northeast of Annan. This is the layout of the locality. It was a former farmsteading, and it's been converted into dwelling houses. And the proposed site is situated to the rear of the steading buildings, as shown in red on the plan. The steading buildings and an adjoining dwelling, which are all highlighted in blue, are all Category B listed. And this is the previous appearance of the site. This is actually taken from the design statement that has been submitted in support of the application. So you can see the former farmsteading, and the area shown in red is what is now the proposed site. And it comprised 2 agricultural buildings, a silage clamp, and a sheep wash. This is the site today. The agricultural buildings shown on the previous slide have actually been demolished now and removed, and all that's left is the previous area's hard standing and grassland that's been left over. And this is the site from the south, so effectively straight at the back of where the steading buildings are, which I'll show you in a moment. This is the site from the east, and you can see its appearance there. And to the east of the site is open countryside. It's a very rural location where this is. And to the north is also open fields. And these are the steading buildings that front the road. They've been converted of quite high quality. You see the traditional nature of the buildings, very sandstone materials and slate roof and pitch roof construction. The access into Stapleton Grange is shown here, which serves the current steading development. And then going into the site, you can see the steading buildings there in a parking area. The proposed site is actually is behind that fence, which has been erected as a separation between the steading buildings and the site. And then that's the rear of the steading buildings. To the west of the group is a line of traditional terraced dwelling houses. These aren't listed, but they form part of the group. And this shows the site and the group together. So actually the site is just behind, it's just in here, it's just behind this green shed. So you can just see the outline of the site there. So it would be read, development would be read in the context of this group. And this is it from the east. So it's just, the site would be here, and a close-up just to see it. That's the site just there. And what's proposed is erection of 3 large detached dwelling houses and the formation of an access road into the site. The access road into the site at the moment is not adopted, but effectively what would be proposed is just a slight extension and into the development there. In terms of the dwellings, a contemporary approach is intended, which is to provide a modern addition to the group, and the materials would include a combination of sandstone, K-render and cedar, cladding to the walls and zinc to the roof. And these cross-sections give an idea of how the development would be read against the existing group. So the 2 cross-sections at the top, existing and proposed, are taken from the east. So there's the new dwelling house and the existing steading development. And then this one's taken from the west. There's been some 3D images submitted with the application to give a bit more of an idea of the appearance of the proposed dwellings. So, so this is one taken looking over the site. There's another one as well, and this is the final one. So that would be the front of the proposed dwellings. After assessing the application, taking all the relevant planning considerations into account, officers consider that the principle of this development is unacceptable in that it would, whilst Stapleton Grange could reasonably be considered to be a small building group, it's not considered that this development would accord with its character and form, and it's also considered that the development would not result in the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. It's also considered that the design would not relate well to the character appearance of this locality and would also have an adverse impact on the character appearance and setting of the adjoining listed buildings, and therefore it's been recommended for refusal.
Thank you, Ian. Andrew, members, points of clarification? Ian?
I've just one on number 1 of the recommendations to refuse. That phrase, proposed development would not result in the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. Can you just explain what that means?
The beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site is the way that the policy is worded. Of the 6 criteria within policy H3, that is the exact wording. Obviously, there's then the supplementary guidance which accompanies that, which provides in more detail what would meet the criteria of a beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. I could try and go through the supplementary guidance if you want, but it's effectively, that is the bullet point of the policy, is what it states. But the supplementary guidance, which policy also states, it clearly provides more information on what criteria needs to be met for a beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site. So, for
Jim?
Aye, just in the plan history, Andrew, the bottom of page 79. Withdrawn on the 9th of June 2015 following officer advice that the development could not be supported. The current application was submitted and validated on the 9th of June 2015 and is identical to that previous submission. So it was withdrawn and then put back in the same day?
It was made valid the next day.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thank you. Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted some clarification on this definition of brownfield sites, and I'm looking at paragraph 4.8, the italicised paragraph. Maybe I need to try and catch up in planning, but my understanding was that there was not a differentiation previously between urban brownfield sites and rural, but this states quite clearly that there is. Was this our new planning policy adopted? Prior to that, was there no differentiation made between urban and rural brownfield sites?
The definition's actually taken at the back of from the local development plan. There's a glossary at the back, and that is a direct quote of what a brownfield site is, which is on, for those members that have the local development plan in front of them, it's on page 314, and it's the fourth one up, and that's the definition that the local development plan has given to what a brownfield site is, and that's just been directly quoted there.
Stephen?
Yeah, it was just on the back of that, Chair. So, just for clarity, are we actually looking at a beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, or a site that's still an agricultural site, which isn't therefore a brownfield site?
David?
Yes, you might recall there was a recent application where this very issue cropped up, and as a result of that, we went away and looked into this matter a bit further and discovered the point that Andrew just made in the LDP that I think we'd missed first time round, but it gives a very distinct definition, so it excludes agriculture for a brownfield site.
Yep. Tom?
But I'm assuming if somebody wanted to come along and erect an agricultural shed there in a silage pit, that would be allowed.
Well, in as far as if it was an agricultural piece of land and somebody was making an agricultural proposal, some of that would actually not even require planning permission.
Jim?
Chair, the reference to agriculture, it refers to land which now has nature conservation or recreational value. Now, from the slides I've looked at, I wouldn't say that that site has any recreational or nature conservation value.
David?
Yeah, I think I see how you're reading that, but what that means is it excludes agriculture, comma, and it should then have forestry, and probably use an Oxford comma, and previously used land which now has nature conservation or recreational value. I'm reading this as meaning agriculture and forestry are completely out with the possibility of being brownfield land.
That, Chair, would not be my reading of the statement.
Well, that seems to be the planners. I've got no other... Oh, Jane. Sorry, Jane.
Sorry, I've almost forgotten what I was going to ask. Are we at the sort of, what stage are we at? I'm sorry,
Well,
Chairman, I've lost
points of clarification.
Points of clarification. Okay, no, I think probably I'll leave it then.
We've not got anything. Members are now in session. Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. Just obviously it was myself that asked the delegation to be withdrawn from this. I'll just outline the reasons why, and hopefully get some degree of sympathy. Councillor McCocktrey actually picked up on one of the points, or one of the main points, for the reasons that I actually drew it in. That's his own instincts that's caused him to do that. The wording that I used is that on the grounds of the history of the site and the potential for land use conflict, in particular that land use conflict, but there is a history to the site as well. I wonder if we could go back to the slide where it shows it was provided as part of the design statement. It goes back to one of your first, I think, Andrew. There, back there. If you look at that site, that's original. That's before any. It was still a farmstead, an operational farmstead at that point. Now you can see you've got the historical element to it at the front with one portal shed, but then you have these silage clamps and the portal buildings at the back, and that's the site that we're actually referring to in this case. And I think what's being brought forward is a legitimate attempt to actually incorporate or reflect actually what it was like at that time. They're trying to retain the historical element, but a contemporary design that's come forward at the back is an attempt to reflect what was there originally. So that's kind of a broad view on it, but what I'd like to put across is to try and get, I will come back, I'll come forward to see what support I get in regards to a site visit, because I think it's important that we do have a site visit in regards to, for us to be able to consider this properly. But it's H3, I think it's referred to within the report, where it doesn't fit any of them criteria. The other two, I think, could be open to interpretation. But I think this is, as it states in the supporting documentation, and Andrew could maybe clarify this, that's part of the original farmstead, and there's no doubt it is a brownfield site that's been applied for. And it's on the deed. The original deed showed that as being the operational side of the actual, it is there now as a small building group. So I think the principle, my view is very much the principle of development has actually been established. The original application came in, the whole site was outlined, so it was obvious that there was something coming forward, an intention to bring it forward. It wasn't just got to be left as a brownfield site. Land use conflict, Councillor McCocktrey picked up an important point. It's one of the bits I picked up on. Now that is a small building group, it's residential, it's not got any other than the green fields round about it. It's got farm use only, and it's very open and sparse area. Now, it could well just, I would imagine that any developer, or even farmer for that case, would want to maximise the potential. If it was the intention, right for the offset, to actually develop this, there was something going up there, and you've got a chance of that there, what you're seeing it in front of you there, overlooking the residential use that is there now. That's with or without planning permission, could actually come under permittable development rights if it's allowed to go back to Greenfield. That's where the land use conflict comes in for me. I wouldn't want to see that coming to fruition. And that's where my argument lies, Chairman. I think this is a small building group, there's no doubt about that. It is a brownfield site in my eyes, there's no doubt about that whatsoever. The land use conflict ultimately is that something like that could end up going back up on that site in order to try and maximise the potential on the site, the development site. And it's the last thing MD would want is seeing that, especially there's no objections at all from the local residents. There's actually support from the local residents. Would like to see something being built there that would address the state of the site as it stands at the moment and bring it back into some kind of order that would keep it maintained in the future. So quite keen to hear what the views of the other members of the committee, but that's the reasons why I brought it in. I think it's legitimate. It's the first one I've ever actually brought to committee. Some members may not realise that, but it is the first I've ever brought.
Yeah. Your point of order, though. I think the process is when a member calls an item in, he makes a presentation and leaves. He doesn't wait for a debate.
No, if you're a member of the committee. If you're not a member of the committee, that's the process. You're a member of the committee, as long as you haven't predetermined that you've got the right to stay and make comments.
Archie. Thanks very much, Chair. I'd be tending to agree with Ian on a couple of points. First of all, I would actually like to go on a site visit on this because I've seen the actual works there, and I think it'd be an idea for members to go along and see what can be done with small building groups and historical buildings as well. Because certainly going past that site, there has been certainly a lot of excellent work, quality work being put in place, and perhaps it's something for the future for us to look at. I also think that Ian's absolutely right. It's a brownfield site. And policy H3, of course, needs to be looked at in its interpretation, and there's potential there, I think, for some form of application coming forward. So if there's a procedural thing here, you know, if Ian's putting forward for a site visit, I would second that.
Absolutely, put that motion forward, then, Chairman.
Any other members otherwise minded? Tom?
No, that's what I was going to suggest, a site visit, because I'd like to see this in context. I'm not necessarily saying I would support this actual application, because I'm not very happy with it, but I'd like to see the site in the context of the surrounding countryside. It's not an area I'm familiar with.
Ian?
I'm fine with the site visit, but just a question, is there any farming being done there now?
Andrew?
So, no, the farming operations have ceased. It's just a residential group.
Jane? None? Members agreed for a site visit? Right, we've got an exempt item now. Have we got the... Could you hand them out, please, Tracy?
Chair, as it's an exempt item, are we excluding the public?
Yes, it's exempt, sorry. Never noticed you there, Sandy.